All right, guys, welcome back to Decoding Babylon. And today I got a very special guest. I got my boy Max Powers from Parasite TV, and I'm super stoked. I mean, we kind of have a million directions we could go, but yeah, let's just go.
Hey,
Welcome to the show, Max.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, Max was like one of these guys when I got on TikTok, and I think at one point he was following me, and I followed him back, and I was like, oh wow, we're friends. And I was like, I looked at some of his videos, and I was like, this guy's good, Max.
Thank you.
I would say the one thing I noticed clearly about your videos is like they're very well researched. I mean, like, so the first question would be like, dude, how did you get into researching all the stuff you do?
Well, I actually have a pretty specific answer to that. In 2012, I believe it was, I was just starting out with my band. I had always wanted to be in a band, and I'd been out of high school for a few years, super directionless, and I started this band, and I really needed money the reason I started the band was because I found a producer that was like available to me, and he was really good. So I needed money, for the recordings and stuff. So I got a job at Radio Shack, and it was like the most depressing, boring job you can imagine. And I started talking about aliens one day with my store manager, and he showed me Reddit. I had never heard of Reddit. He showed me that, like, one of the alien subreddits, and I just immersed myself just for entertainment and knowledge, and just to pass the time. And I was so into music, and it was really the only thing that was important to me. But this other thing, it was kind of like I only had two interests, and it was aliens and music. And with the aliens thing, the interest was purely like, I want to see more like crazy stuff. For how much is out there, there's not much out there,
Mm-hmm.
like concrete things that you can look at. And I saw this video I want to say it was called Alien Contact: The Message, and it wasn't on like whoever's like YouTube profile it was on. It wasn't their video. I have no idea where they got it. It almost seemed like a bunch of clips from other videos that people had made, but there was some incredible stuff on there that I couldn't explain. And so I got really into that, and then eventually the subreddit got shut down. I don't think it didn't have enough traffic or something. It wasn't like blocked or anything, but it got shut down. And the only people that were left were like, if you still want to talk about this stuff, go to the conspiracy subreddit. So I have now been a 10 or 11 year lurker. I've never logged in, I've never posted, I've never commented, but it's like, wake up in the morning, I hit either the conspiracy subreddit or the high strangeness subreddit, and fast forward a bunch of years, the band thing kind of dissipated, and it went well enough to keep me busy and keep me touring and making music. I still love it, but I just, got to a point where I was kind of jaded and depressed and just working. I was like door dashing and doing Uber Eats, and I had gone through a breakup, so I had like a apartment that was way too nice and expensive for me, and so I was just like struggling to pay the rent and do that. And I had kind of gotten into TikTok. Like everybody else, I feel like that hears about it, it's like, it's not for me. That's like some dumb dancing video.
That's for 13-year-old
Yeah.
girls doing dances. That's
Right.
I remember the first time my brother was like, "You should get on TikTok." That's what I told him. I was like, "Bro, what are you, like 50? Like why?" Why?
Yeah.
And then as soon as he started to send me some videos about like the Illuminati and stuff, oh, this is kind of interesting.
You're like, what is that doing on there?
Yeah, no, that's cool. They have that on TikTok.
So even before I saw any of the conspiracy stuff, I saw I can't remember her exact but her name's Phoebe, I believe, and she was posting about mermaids like that. I don't know if you remember that kind of time on TikTok, but her videos about this guy that was posting like these really creepy mermaid videos from like a fishing boat he worked on. And then like the guy disappeared. It was kind of like the proto Andrew Dawson Giants on the Mountain thing. Like he posted these videos and then he disappeared, and then he posted a couple more videos and those got taken down. And I was like, it was like this saga that was I could only see it on TikTok. So I made a TikTok. Tried and failed to like promote my solo music on TikTok. Gave up again. And then it was like a year later, I saw JK Ultra. I absolutely love JK Ultra. She's been a great friend. She's so cool. I saw her videos about like, oh, is the Antichrist alive right now? And like whether or not you believe in that kind of stuff, like who would it be, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And her videos are so energetic and well made. But on the production side, like as a musician and someone that's gone through all that stuff, I never spent a single day like engineering the music. I felt like I was so bad at that. Like it was almost like math. And so when I saw the way that she made her videos production wise, I was like, it just clicked. I was like, wait, I could do this. She just has a cool, her house is really well made up, and it's the information and the presentation that is getting me, and I can do that. I have that. I've sang in front of thousands of people and toured and done all this stuff. I'm pretty sure I can do that. And I've had this insane interest in the paranormal and conspiracies and the extraterrestrials phenomenon and stuff. And it's not just an interest. I mean, every friends group has that guy that's like, oh, did you hear? Oh, that's not what really happened, And I'm that guy. And so I would work in the mornings, take about an hour break at around 2, and then go back. I mean, I was working I was self-employed with DoorDash, but I was having to work 12-hour days just to like pay the bills and stuff. And so I was driving myself insane with content creation, because when I look back at music, I got so lucky so many times, and I have some songs that have, over 1 million streams, but it was so niche, and, I'm not making music anymore. It didn't happen for me. So I look back on that as kind of a failure, and I think I was really scared to try it. And I was driving myself crazy all day and night thinking about it, and finally I just picked a topic off something that I had in my notes. It was like some weird pictures of the moon, and I made a video. And I was so sure that it was going to be nothing that I didn't even look at the video until the next day. I posted it at like 3 p.m. and the next day I woke up and it had over 100,000 views, and I was like,
oh wow. So so I don't even know this. So this is a question I honestly don't know. When did you post this TikTok? Because if you guys don't know, Max has like 800,000 followers on TikTok currently. Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm actually losing followers right now. It's crazy.
I believe it, knowing the algorithm these days.
Because I haven't had that influx of followers in so long that even though I get maybe 100 followers a day, all the old profiles that like get auto deleted or whatever,
the kind of people that like Max get banned.
Yeah, that's also true. But so anyway, I posted this it must have been February of last year of 2022, because later that month I put out the Simpsons video, and that one. So I put out this video about the moon, and I knew from watching TikToks, I'm like, comment part 2, and I'll do another one. And I had hundreds of comments. So I was like, oh my god, they commented part 2. Now what do I do? So I made a part 2. I was like, whatever, I don't even care about this. Part 2, here you go. What am I gonna do next? And I just went, man. I just made a video every day. I had also, like I said, I was driving myself crazy. I was like researching, which I don't know if you can curse on here or whatever, but a lot of the like how to make a TikTok work, it's all bullshit. You just have to find something you're interested in and talk about it every day. One of the like rules that I find to be compelling about how to make content is like, if you're coming into it cold, you haven't done it before, do it every day for 90 days. I knew that in my head already. So I was like, I'm going to make a video every day. I don't think it was every day for 90 days, but it was most days. And somewhere in there in the first month or so, I made a video about the Simpsons predictions, Mandela effect type thing, and it just...
Oh, yeah.
I called my mom a couple days in after releasing it, and I was like, I think something's happening because I think I might get 1 million views on this video. And my mom was like, that's really good, right? I'm like, I don't know. I think that might be really good. And then when it was at like 4 million, I was sitting there with a calculator on my phone going like, how much money is like 4 million views? And I moved the decimal point the wrong way, and I was literally car shopping. I was like, I need a new car desperately. Like, I'm gonna get
when is the money come? Come on,
Yeah.
TikTok now.
Yeah.
I'm rich now, right?
But I mean, like with music and YouTube and stuff like that, 4 million views, that's going to do something for you. And so I was like, oh, this is definitely gonna help me out. I'm gonna keep creating, obviously, but like, you know, this is gonna get me. I was in a really bad financial situation. I was drowning. Drowning is the only word for it. And I had a really good job previously that I could have gone back to, but I was trying not to. I needed to do this. And then I figured out that that video ended up getting, I think, 8 million views that month. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, and then I got trickle views on all my other videos. I think I ended up getting about 9 million views that month. And I think that was $400. So, but it did not deter me.
So what kind of car did you get?
I didn't. I'm still driving the same car, and it's not a bad car.
That's funny that you say that too, because like I think my first real TikTok was in December of 2021. So like so we're pretty close as far as getting in there, and I think that like
very close.
I must have made. I think I made like 5 videos, and like maybe my 5th video got 1 million views. But it was funny. Wow. It wasn't one of those ones where it went super viral quick. It got to like 100,000 views like in a day. And I told my brother, and I was just like, before it got 100,000, I was like, I think this might get 100,000 views. And my brother was like, it's going to get 1 million, and we both laughed.
That's a good brother though.
And it did, and it was interesting how that just happened. And I said the funny thing, like as you said, that the one thing I didn't know a lot about TikTok. So like I remember when I first made my first videos, I really hadn't watched a lot of it. So I was making a video, like I said, I made video with the stuff I had in my office, and I kind of made this little skit almost. And it was almost good that I didn't know a lot about TikTok, because it allowed me to do something that probably was different from most of the things. And it wasn't until I probably saw guys like you, and I was like, how does he do the thing with the box of him inside the video? And I was like, and it was like, so that's how like the more I became friends with guys like you, I realized I've got to step my game up. And then I'm like, then I watched my old videos from like the beginning of like 2022, and I'm like, oh God, how did anybody like this? This is so cringe. I make myself cringe. I'm like, how did anyone like me?
This is a small thing. I still struggle with sound when I'm making something on my phone versus computer, but my first couple of videos, I'm like walking around my house, because I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to walk around while you're making these.
Make it interesting.
Yeah. And maybe that worked. Maybe that's why I'm not getting views right now. But the sound is like, you know, I'll be walking and you can hear pretty good, and then I'll walk by like my kitchen and it's like echoing all of a sudden, and then I'm in a hallway and you can hear the fans in the bathroom or something. But yeah, man, it's been a huge learning experience. I still like just that thing you said about how does he get the box or whatever. I get those kind of questions all the time, and I'm not the kind of person that replies to every comment. It's too exhausting. But I genuinely try to help anyone that's like seeking help on starting, or if there's people that are, you know, taking something the wrong way, or taking like I'm sure you've had this before, when you post something and then someone like takes your post and tries to use it to like say something evil or vile about like something else, and you're like, so I'll reply to those like, what, this is not what I meant, whatever this is. But that little box thing, I stopped making TikToks for a while because of that. I didn't like using the green screen thing, and so I would, you know, upload the photo, and then I'd have a little box or a circle or whatever. And then one time I went on TikTok to make a video the same way that's been so successful for me. And the thing that had been so successful for me, I don't know. I mean, I think I might be nearing maybe 35 or 50 million views, somewhere in there, I think.
Gosh, that's incredible.
I could be way lower. It might be 20 or something. But I've had multiple that have gotten like 8, 9 million views. I've had one that had 16. So it's up there. And the way that I did all those videos, I go to make a video, and that thing is just gone. They don't have it anymore.
Well, that's the funny thing.
I was like, what?
When you were actually using because I think that's how most of us did it. We made the videos on on the TikTok app, and of course later when you start posting them across platforms, you try not to make them on TikTok, so you have the original with no watermark.
Yeah.
But I've had that happen too. Do you remember back in the day when you'd like make the video on TikTok, and then all your editing tools would be gone, and you couldn't even cut the segments right, and you're like, you made all this video, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with it now? It's like, now it's going to look stupid because I got all these goofy edits in it.
And the day before it was there, and then the day after it was there, but for some reason, and so I mean I had already been making them off platform for a while, but the peaks and valleys of viewership, it's so crazy, man. I have 800,000 followers. Every one of those people that followed me, you follow somebody because you want to see more from them. Yeah. But that's not how TikTok works, though.
No, that's not how TikTok works.
As much as I want to hit that million, I don't know why. So it can validate something in me about failing.
It's hard. It does feel like that would be
a thing,
like a million.
Right?
Yeah,
it's a thing.
Yeah, that seems like you get major internet cred if you got a million. I mean, that's pretty. I mean, it's funny. Like, obviously, I'm sure as the beginning when you got 100,000 followers, you were like, "How about that?
Yeah,
100,000." Same thing with me. But then it's like, then you get friends who got like, well, my friend's got a million. It's like, so then you get 200,000 followers, and then you get friends who have, like 1.3 million and stuff like that.
To me, the follower count was it never got to my head in a weird way or anything. It was, I am so like self-sabotaging that the follower count for me was the only thing that did for me, like emotionally or mentally, was like, don't quit. That like all those, it's not an accident. These people followed you because they want to see more.
Yeah, so, you make good stuff.
Stop stopping. Just make the video. Anyways, I had already stopped making videos on platform for the reasons you said. It's so much easier to do it off platform and then upload it, because any number of things can happen when you're making it on TikTok and then it's gone. And you're like, oh, I have to start over now. And I'm the type of person,
that's frustrating.
I'm really fun a lot of the times, but when I'm not energetic or whatever, it's so hard to fake it for me. And I mean, there's so many videos where I'm just dead-eyed, like, and then the other thing happened, and then it moved.
But see, that's the thing with you, though. You've kind of got that. You got the dryness about you, and it's funny because like when I started, I think like when I did my first real big video was like the Hoover Dam video, and
that was your first.
I think
one?
That was my first like really like I went from like 50,000 followers to like 110.
Oh, okay.
So it was a massive
big
jump.
Influx, yeah.
And it was like the way I did that video. Obviously, I kind of was real snappy in that video, and I was like kind of joking the whole time, and I was,
Well,
so
you have that.
Was like,
you have that. Do you really believe that snark?
I'm trying. Obviously, I'm trying for a little bit of a bro, like an internet bro, kind of like, haha, what do you think? Kind of like a little bit of sarcasm. But you know how it goes. Like, I'm not always feeling like that. So I remember back in the day, I would go sit in front of my phone and I would try to get those quick, snappy takes, and I would be like, I'd be in front of my phone for like an hour trying to make a video that's 90 seconds long.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting because it's like, because you do feel like I was almost seeing myself as, do you remember like, what's his name? Bill O'Reilly? when like you see those outtakes.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. And he's like freaking out. And I was like, I finally get what he's doing.
You're like, when you see that, you're like, what a spaz. Did you make all this money? And it's like, no, he's hot and he's sweating and his shirt is soaked because he's probably been in that chair for 4 hours. And any kind of lighting, when you're under it, it's immediately, you're like, okay, this sucks. Like, I don't know if you can hear it. I have my fan on full blast. I mean, it's almost winter. But
It's funny, where I'm at normally it's cold, but yeah, I finally understood what it was like because he's got to have this kind of certain, he's got. Me and Max are not really playing a character, but we might be playing an exaggerated version of ourselves. So it's like to try to get into that thing, and then things for not work. It's like as soon as you start getting aggravated.
Yeah.
Well, now I can't make this. I can't be the fun guy. I can't be the fun bro. I can't be like an angry guy doing this video. I'll look like people are like, what's wrong with him?
Yeah. And that's just, that's part of doing it every day. You do it and you make it work. And sometimes, sometimes I know I'm making a video and I'm like, I could just feel, I know it's a good, pop culture topic or something. And I'm like, this is going to do 1 million. And then sometimes I'm absolutely sure that I have it, and then it flops, and then I try to repost it later, and it flops again, and I'm like, fine, I guess I don't know what I'm doing. But then sometimes there's days like we just described where you just push through, and you're like, I have chosen to do this, and I know you like, either partially own or operate a business, but this is my business, and I had to like burn the boats, or I would half-ass it. So, yeah, there's those days where you push through and you just do it, and you're like, this sucks. And then that one gets a huge amount of interest.
I almost feel like the TikTok, and this was my theory early on, that like obviously a guy like you who's having like the real successful videos, where you're like your follows and stuff will like when you get a video like you're talking about getting 8 million views, I know your follows were just going up, like you're watching them go up like by 1,000 really fast. And if TikTok did not stop those videos, you wouldn't have to make a lot of videos. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because I think that's what kind of gives us the impetus to continue to make videos where you do get that viral success, and then it's like you make a few more and you're like, okay, I'm not really getting that success, and then you get another big one, and it's almost like if TikTok let every video you had get real big, maybe you wouldn't try as hard, maybe you wouldn't be as you know what I mean, like as down to do it all the time.
Here's my response to that. And I don't know how this would work with their current setup because there's so many people on TikTok. But let's say out of my 800,000 followers, I'd have to wager that 300,000 of them are daily users. If I put out a video and within the first 2 or 3 days it's out, it's in every person that follows me and is on TikTok that day, it's in their feed. So let's say most of the videos that I put out are seen by, at least half of my followers. I would probably make 2 videos a week because they would all have at least 300,000 views plus the algorithm boost from the video.
That'd be solid.
But then you know what would happen? They'd have to pay me for all those views. And that's what I think
that's correct.
Gets in my way mentally with it sometimes is I'm like, I know I need to monetize this in order to keep doing it. But has monetizing it like disabled me from having that true virality? But when you ask them, not that you can actually ask anybody from TikTok anything, but when you ask them, hey, would I get more views if I wasn't? They're like, no. If anything, you get more views when you're monetized.
We're totally not censoring you.
So, so sometimes you get censored because you're talking about something. It's a big no-no topic, which I'm usually really good about that. Like I can tell that I can't talk about this, and sometimes I do it anyway. Or sometimes you get censored, I'm sure, because it's like, hey, look, we just gave this guy money last month. What are we gonna pay him all the time? Like,
yeah, exactly.
We'll throw him a bone. But honestly, I think it's all about consistency and just trusting yourself, trusting your topic choices, and using discernment. I'm in the middle of kind of trying to make a comeback right now, not of any like numbers or like a financial comeback or anything like that, but just creatively, production output. I spent almost an entire month of like working hours on a 56-minute long video about the Maui fires in September. And then I had it was my girlfriend's birthday. We went to Arizona. It was this huge thing. The day I uploaded it, I was like, I really hope there's no problems with this because I have a plane to catch. and I uploaded it and then drove to the airport and left. And then a couple days after that, I had a big move across state lines and everything, and I was sick. I had bronchitis like halfway through the trip. So I already have this, I think, kind of reputation with my YouTube crowd, with my YouTube fans.
Yeah, I should mention, not only does Max have 800,000, he's got 80,000 subs on YouTube as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, obviously Max makes great YouTube, as good as his TikToks were. His YouTube videos are better.
Yeah, and I should probably mention, just for I know we have some crossover, but I think you probably have a lot of followers that aren't familiar with me, if I had to guess. And I should probably mention, and to you too, I don't think we've talked about this. I'm like, not because it's YouTube or anything, like the branding of it or whatever, but I'm a lot more invested in like my personal YouTube content, because that was like a big mountain for me to climb. I knew obviously TikTok's working out, but I'm like, literally anyone can do this. And we talked about the other day, you know, you started making TikToks, and then you literally were like, I'm going to make movies and I'm going to do a podcast. And my thing was, I really love like certain YouTubers, and you know, when you start creating content, I'm sure a lot of people are like, I'm going to be just like this guy. And I'm not like any of them. I haven't really found my niche yet in presentation. That's kind of what I'm working on with this comeback right now, is like, how do I want to present for the next year or so? And then ramping up production. I'd really like to do a weekly YouTube video, and then in the background be working on like a much longer video to put out, you know, every 6 weeks or so. But yeah, I love all these YouTube content creators, and there's like movie level content on there.
I know. That's the one thing I'm impressed with sometimes when I'm like, as Brian and I were making the movie, and then I'm watching like YouTube videos that are like how much, of course, my mind, I'm sure, as somebody like you who when you start making this stuff, you're like, how much time and how many people are working on this project? Mm-hmm. Because like, I think, because obviously I could tell like a guy like you, well, I can't tell because your stuff's good, but like, I've always assumed it was just you doing it, and like, and typically it's just me. And like, so people ask like, your videos have gotten better. Is anyone doing them for you? I'm like, no, I got to do mm-hmm. all this stuff. They're
getting better because you're learning how to do it.
Right. Well, I get better. I get a little faster at it, but you also, like, I'm sure you know, you get a little bit more anal about the way it looks and the way it sounds, and like you can spend a lot more time on the details. That's kind of the beauty. And as we go back to talking about making TikToks, you know, as long as the things you're saying are interesting, people forgive a lot of your editing problems and your lack of. So I think that's the one beauty thing about TikTok, is that like, the information is really what people want. And I think sometimes people enjoy the fact that you're not very good because they know that you're just a guy. Mm-hmm. And I think so many people get tired of like the polished suits and the hairpiece news people. They want to see this guy who doesn't really have a lot of reason to lie to you. He's just giving you the information. He's not making money doing it. And I think that's kind of the beauty of TikTok. But I always kind of I think us TikTokers kind of viewed YouTube as like the major leagues. TikTok's like TikTok's like maybe like AA baseball. I think Instagram maybe like AAA, but then you get to like
you can walk on.
But YouTube is the majors for us content creators.
The crazy thing about YouTube though is like, there's people on YouTube that just sit down in front of their camera and do what we just talked about and just present, and you're like, the whole time you're just enthralled with their presentation. And I think that's kind of been my like personal downfall in the last year. I had an incredible amount of success in like a 6 or 7 week period this time last year, where again, it was like when the Simpsons video came out, and I called my mom and I was like, this might be really big. It was big. I mean, it garnered me, I think, 200,000 followers off just that video over the span of a few weeks, something along those lines. I had something similar happen on YouTube, where I went from about 20,000 subscribers to 65 in a month.
That's a big jump.
And multiple of my videos were getting hundreds of thousands of views, and so it was very financially successful. These niche topics that I was talking about, And so I tried to do what I thought you were supposed to do, and I doubled down on it. And I was like, all right, let's go. And I made a couple more videos, and like 3 videos in a row, they got demonetized. And one of them was like about the Balenciaga thing when it was happening. And I thought in my head, I'm like, at the rate I was making the videos, I was like, I already said the video's coming out today. I guess I'll just have to put it out and not make money on this one. But what I didn't realize was that when you allow something to be age restricted and demonetized, it heavily messes with your algorithm. And
oh, really? So they don't want to show your videos anymore because you put
No.
out stuff that's.
No.
Well, I guess I guess I could see that from like YouTube's perspective too, because it's like we want to be able to monetize they want to be able to
They want the
monetize your
money,
videos
yeah.
too. So they're thinking like, if this guy's going to make a bunch of subversive stuff, we don't want to show anybody his videos anymore because we're going to promote somebody who doesn't do that.
Exactly. So yeah, I kind of shot myself in the foot there, and it's been a crazy year of just I get way too deep with it. I think about it too much, and now I'm trying to just. I knew I was taking a huge risk with the Maui Fires video. Somehow it is monetized technically, and it's not age restricted, and I'm very careful in that video. And I do present some things that aren't facts, but I also am very clear about when it's speculation and when it's speculation that is not my speculation. It's like, here's a bunch of videos from people that are on the ground there or are survivors, and this is what they're talking about. So it is monetized, but it's obviously was very clearly like shadow banned. It was my fastest growing video ever, I believe, in the first 24 hours, and it just hit a brick wall and stopped, and people were saying it wasn't coming up in search. So, there's different things like that, but I think the main thing about making any, being creative at all is you just have to keep doing it, or it's not going to pay off. You can think about it all you want, but
yeah, it's funny. Like, I'm sure that obviously you've made a career doing it. Obviously, Lord willing, I'm trying. That's what my goal is.
I think we're probably closer as career wise as you like career wise. I think we're probably closer than you think, because I've also invested a lot of money into it because I made a lot of money really quickly, and then I stopped making money for a while, and then I started making money again off sponsorships, but my ad revenue has stayed fairly low the entire year. So yes, it is my career now, but it's not the career that it was like for the latter half of last year. Like this year has been kind of rough because I got less consistent and the quality went way up. And now I'm like, okay, the quality has to stay high, and I have to kind of refine this a little bit. And I have no doubt that it'll get better. But yeah, I was just saying we're probably a little. Yeah,
I wonder. I always think about it like this too, and I'm sure you know it's the same way because I knew as soon as I saw your TikToks, and then as soon as I saw your YouTube channel, and I was like, this guy obviously knows what he's doing. He's interesting, and then it's like, but of course, like I said, you've got 80,000 subs is nothing to sneeze at, but I see people who have way more, and then you're like, and then you're looking at it. I don't know if it was like that when we got into TikTok, we obviously got in at a good time where guys could blow up, and then sometimes I remember thinking like as soon as I got over to YouTube, I thought this is like a closed platform where they're not trying to really let us guys like us grow very like organically thing. Like, and maybe it's the same way where like that I know that the quality of your videos compared to people who have tons of followers. I'm like, Max's videos are so much better, so much more research. Things that he like yours. When I watch your stuff, I learn stuff. I mean, that's like sometimes you take for granted when you do a lot of your own research. Like your friends make videos, and you're like, I already know about, I already know what he's talking about, and you don't feel like you need to watch it. But I know that you do a pretty good job of like things that are current, like digging deep, like quick. Because I think obviously a lot of stuff I do is I look pretty far back, and so like
I think that's the way to go.
Obviously,
I think it's. I
felt like. I felt like to me when I realized I was getting in trouble, like I was getting like community guideline strikes when I was too quick on the conspiracy stuff. And it's like, well, I mean, because at that point you don't know what's true. And that's why I said like usually when I would go backwards, I would pretty much have the receipts of saying like, hey, this is just the truth right here. And it's not as controversial to talk about the things that happened long ago versus like, if you say something wrong about what happened in Maui, or the Balenciaga thing, or like especially anything to do with medical stuff, if you say the wrong thing right now, like they're going to say this is your information is dangerous. Like they'll actually try to act like this thing is like we have to stop.
You're
this
hurting those dead people by talking about them.
Well, like that's what they all. I mean, like I said, I remember you had that great quote, and I wish you started getting into talking about some of this stuff. Is you had that Challenger video, and I remember one time I had to duet your Challenger video, and it's funny. I had to actually use CapCut to put myself into it to duet it because it wouldn't let me do it with your sound was all messed up, and I had to, and they probably do that to us on TikTok when they don't want that video to be spread anymore. And so you had that quote. What was it when you're basically saying it becomes taboo to start talking about? What was exactly how you were saying it?
Oh,
like,
man, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of like, I put a disclaimer at the beginning of that video because I know exactly there are certain and this goes back to like what gets you interested in conspiracy theories. The thing that got me interested in conspiracy theories, I was not like this, but the thing that got me interested was I noticed, years ago, like there are certain things that the second that it's brought up, you're like, I don't want to hear that because people died. But people die every day, and we talk about it every day.
Right.
But there's certain things, and I am not a person that lacks reverence for institutions or anything like that. Like, I was raised in a religious conservative home, like go troops, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not someone that lacks reverence, but there are certain things like 9/11 and certain school shootings I won't name, and a lot of other disasters that you're not allowed to talk about it because we have this perceived reverence, which is actually like a social lock. And so I think the quote was something like, so I put a disclaimer at the beginning of the video, like, just so you know, if you get upset by me talking about this, that's all according to plan because that's how that's how you've been programmed to react. And I'm not saying that in any kind of like, I've broken my programming and you haven't. It's just, no, I have it too. And there's certain things we're not supposed to talk about. So it's something along the lines of like, if you get upset, that's totally fine. I accept that and it's going to happen. But just know that that's why they showed this on TV. They showed it to upset people. They showed the buildings collapsing on 9/11 to upset people because a lot of times when there's like a tragedy, like you'll hear about it, you'll see pictures maybe, but they're not going to show it. But like they use things to scar us emotionally. Anyways, I'm getting too deep into it, but it's
but you're right. I mean, because that's interesting. So if you guys obviously probably not familiar with what we're talking about, so Max did a video about the Challenger, and then it just so happens it appears that some of the people may have survived that somehow. I mean, so you obviously can we might never know how they survived it, but there's people with identical names. Like either their brothers, twin brothers survived somehow. And
if you're not familiar with what the Challenger was, the Challenger was a space shuttle that launched in like 86 or 85, I think. And it just so happened to have a school teacher on board. So like I say, because
how old are you, Max? You said
I'm 32.
Well, see, I'm 45. So I was one of those kids just sitting there like this as they rolled the TV into the rooms because the school teacher was on there.
So because the school teacher was on, every school across America
we all knew. Like
was watching
it was funny. It was funny because it was almost like there was a space shuttle going up a lot, but that was a particular big one because of the teacher.
Yeah, because it was. I mean, looking back on it, what they were trying to say is like, oh, now we're starting to send. Not normal. I mean, there's all kinds of people that teach and there's all kinds of people that are astronauts. But until that point, it's like military pilots and engineers and mathematicians and stuff like that are going into space. But now we're mostly Freemasons, though. Right. So, but now we're going to normalize space flight, and we're taking a school teacher up. Of course, she was trained and everything. That was something that was misinterpreted from my video, but it was like a kind of a random thing. Like, oh, it's just a school teacher. Of course, they're going to train her how to be an astronaut. But what do they do, or what happens? First of all, they're very careful. There's a paper trail detailing that it was extremely dangerous to launch that day. And I don't remember the names, but there were two engineers that were working on it. That there was these seals that were they would absolutely fault if the rocket launch took place on a day that was colder than a certain temperature. And they actually pushed the launch to be later in the year. And these two engineers are like, yeah, don't do that. Do not launch it. And they're like, well, it's fine. And then they launched it, and on live television in front of millions and millions and millions of school children, it exploded, and everyone died. Except...
Or did they?
Except there's I think there was 10 people on board. Like 7 of them have literal doppelgangers now, out there right now, that either have the same name or like slight variations of the first name but the same last name. And,
you know what's funny is that somebody was like in my comment section. So I did a video just of us. I took from Decoding Babylon, me and Brian talking about it, and I made that into a little clip. And a couple of the comments in there was like, "Oh, like it's totally unusual for people to look the same." I said, them having the exact same name and the exact same age is also a little suspect. I was like, but yes, obviously people resemble each other, but I mean, like, that's having the exact same name. I mean, you show me many more examples of that.
Yeah, and normally I'm very against like badgering people in person. Like I would never do that. I would never think I know a conspiracy. I would never think of a video idea and then go, and for part of that video, I'll confront the person in their driveway.
No,
and I can't remember his name, but the guy that started discovering this stuff, he did that, and like you just can't fake these reactions. These reactions are just like, oh, somebody found me. It's very strange, the reactions, or they're kind of like, hey. Oh, no, that's not me. If someone came to me and they were like, you died in that space shuttle, I'd be like, you're insane. No, I didn't. What are you talking about? You know? And
who are you?
Never like that. What are you doing here, man? Like, get off my property. It's never like that. They're like, oh, I haven't had media training in a couple decades. What am I supposed to do with this? And yeah, it goes back to we talked about on the phone a few days ago. The thing that kind of led me to making that video is I'm a huge NASA skeptic. I'm not like a space skeptic. I'm absolutely not a flat earth guy, but I do kind of take issue with NASA and a lot of the things that they do and a lot of the things that they say. And I'm a huge skeptic of why they need like $60 million in taxpayer money a day, per day. And that's what we know about.
That's what the funny part is, like when you get the people like, well, why would they lie? Well, that's a lot of incentive to lie. And I was saying, like, can you imagine having that budget and them not actually doing anything?
Yeah.
Like them actually not producing any results. It's
I can imagine it.
Well, like, right. That's why I said I was joking the other day, and it was like, you know why they would fake a lot of this stuff? Because I saw they went before Congress to try to get put in the budget, them cleaning up space debris. Okay, so they're going to be cleaning up space debris, and you're like, okay, so now who's going to verify whether they do that or not?
Yeah.
I mean,
them.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry. It's totally clean.
Space TikTok.
They got like I was thinking like they're probably going to come out with like, you ever see Spaceballs, like the Mega Maid? Mm-hmm. And they're going to have like the big vacuum thing, the transformer into the vacuum, and they're going to just vacuum up all those broken satellites that are just hanging out up in the atmosphere that don't ever collide with the International Space Station, even though it goes 17,000 miles an hour. And imagine if a bug hit it, would probably destroy a window, but
well, like
I don't know.
I'm well aware that we have a lot of stuff in the upper atmosphere in orbit. That cheeky finger quote is as far as I'll go into that realm, but in orbit. But okay, so there's the
we know what you're saying.
There's the vastness of space, and for my entire life, and for at least a couple lifetimes before my life, we have been looking into space and sending radio transmissions and signals and satellites, and we've been looking way out there, and there's nothing there other than other space stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, who are we trying to impress by cleaning up space junk? It's in space.
Right. Well, like I
Is
said,
it?
isn't it interesting though that that's what I'm saying? Like, so if you have this International Space Station, like, do they ever say, "Oh gosh, there was an emergency at the International Space Station. This part of this former satellite looked like it collided into the thing, and now there's a giant hole. Oh, by the way, everyone died." Isn't it amazing how like as dangerous as they act like space is, and if you think this thing's going
Pretty
17
safe, statistically.
these people are acting like clowns on their National Space Station. It's like I was thinking about this. So I don't know if you've seen the new Top Gun movie, and if you haven't, I don't think you need to. It's like nostalgia of the movie, copy and paste, but the very beginning of it, Tom Cruise is still Maverick. He's doing very dangerous things. So he's flying in this new what looks like to be like one of those SR-71 type vehicle jets, and they're trying to break the sound record or the speed record, and so they're trying to go Mach 10, and so like of course you look at what he wears when he's going to try to break that record. He's got like a spacesuit on, and I think the SR-71 obviously flew super high. Well, anyways, I think it gets to Mach spoilers. It gets to like Mach 10.3 or something. Well,
That's even more than Mach 10.
That's right. Because Maverick is, he is dangerous, like Iceman said, and so he goes that fast. And then I was thinking about, what they wear to go 17,500, so almost like 7,000 miles an hour faster than Maverick was going in Top Gun. They wear polo shirts. They wear polo shirts and they float around and they do like you're thinking like, doesn't this seem like silly? Shouldn't these people be more serious? Like, wouldn't you think about? And I've always wanted to see this. I want to see them take somebody from the ground, fly up to the International Space Station, somehow dock that thing, and then the person go from one vehicle to the next. Doesn't that seem like that would be pretty insane and intense to watch that?
Well, you can see that in several Hollywood movies, right. Which somehow they did it before the people that are in space and before the people that get $60 million a day. Because I'll tell you what I would do with a $60 million a day budget. Space bridge. I would build one of those super futuristic, bridges into space that we see in movies. Like in Ad Astra, that would make it a lot safer and easier to get, into the upper atmosphere. And I would do what you said, there would be a no cuts GoPro video of the launch and then getting into orbit. But me saying all this stuff doesn't necessarily mean I think it's fake. Maybe the programming is just that deep, but I think it's just a lot easier to, put some people in a soundstage and fake some stuff to get $60 million a day. I mean, you can feed a lot of families on $60 million a day. And for anybody that thinks, for anybody that has the question of like, well, why? I mean, that's just convoluted. And it's like, well, it's part of a system that controls your entire life. And we have it pretty good in a lot of ways in America and in a lot of Western countries. We have it pretty good. But we've also never had the opportunity to think outside of the system that is immediately impressed upon us from birth. And until you grow up a little bit and get out there in the world and start to question things on your own, which not everybody is going to do, not everybody has to do that. Very few people are going to question it in the ways that we do. There's no reason to believe any of this stuff. But, I guess in a way I can have kind of anarchistic thoughts sometimes because I hate the lies. I hate lies.
Yeah.
And I've kind of been my own worst enemy in some ways because I also really love fiction. And I like to cover fiction. I don't do it very often. But I like kind of, ARG fiction, which is like, alternative reality, game. So it's like it'll be presented like on Twitter as something that's happening, but in reality, it's just like a story, So it's like, oh, the sun never came up today was a big one. I can't remember where that one went, but just stuff like that. It's really fun to cover. And so I hate the lies, but sometimes I need a break and I need to like just cover something fun. And then people are like, well, now I don't take the other stuff you were talking about seriously. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to get a sense of discernment at some point and figure out when I'm talking about ghosts in the woods and, portals and stuff like that. And I'm saying it's from the No Sleep subreddit. And that's probably not real since that's a fictional place. So just, you know.
Do you wonder if it's like that? I think that in a lot of ways, and I think this is as a Christian, I believe that a lot of the space stuff is a way for people to have a religion that's not really religion, and that's why like that I think that I know a lot of people, and obviously like the nerd culture would be like, you're a Trekkie, you're in love with Star Wars, and you're like, you hear about the people who were getting depressed when they couldn't live in Pandora and couldn't be Na'vi and all this kind of stuff because we have been put in this matrix of a reality where we have to like be little worker bees and we want something to be more. But I guess for a lot of people, the space stuff, I effing love science. They can have this religious view about like, oh, maybe one day we're going to be like Captain Kirk and we can go, after we get everything on Earth straight and everybody will be like loving each other, we're going to go like check out all the other worlds and interact with things, and it gives people like their imaginations really can kind of like keep them going when life becomes very depressing here, because like, yeah, you're looking at the price of groceries and all this other kind of stuff, and then they're like, we're going to colonize Mars. And I always thought like, wait a minute, why would we want to colonize that dumb red rock? At least that's what they tell us it is. Like, isn't it funny when they talk about like that maybe one day we're going to have to leave Earth? And I was thinking like, all right, but these other places are kind of looking uninhabitable.
They're way worse in every way. But we're going to fix that instead of...
I know. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't we... Can't we just make this place a little... Like, I was thinking like, okay, so if you can make this dome, like, like I think Elon Musk was talking about this, and I was laughing to my dad about this. I was like, he wanted to make this thing on Mars where people could live, and I thought, how about this? You try that out in like the worst desert on Earth. Like just build it there to see if it works. And then guess what? If it works here, wouldn't that be better than Mars?
Yeah.
It would be a lot cheaper. Like,
yeah.
Imagine the construction, imagine the union rates over on Mars. But no, I mean, I think that some of the space stuff gives people this kind of, a religious view of things like that requires no accountability at all. It just means like, oh, trust us. All your money's going to something good because one day we're going to have like, the Enterprise and all that stuff.
Well, I think I can kind of respond to that and kind of tie it all together in an extremely dark and disturbing and depressing way. The phenomenon, I don't think a lot of people have heard this or remember this, but the phenomenon of people going to see the movie Avatar and then going into a deep depression afterwards is dystopian and upsetting to me. And I understand it. I didn't have that experience, but my understanding of it, I can kind of apply that. There's this YouTuber who barely ever uploads, and he's called The Angry Hippie, and he makes really extremely deep dive videos into like, human consciousness, and it's really hard to kind of like tie down what his videos are about. I'll just say it's kind of like focusing on what humanity could be and probably what we're supposed to be. And when I say I can kind of tie this all together in a dark and disturbing way, it's only dark and disturbing because the reason people got so depressed about Avatar, it's so funny. It's such a scathing indictment of like our civilization, because what are they depressed about? Okay, these beings live in the jungle. They're self-sufficient. They hunt, but they really respect. They don't overhunt. They hunt what they need.
Mm-hmm.
They they gather other stuff that they need. It's not all meat based or whatever. They highly respect it's been so long, but I believe something that happens in the movie is there's like an action scene where the human avatar guy, hybrid, has to kill an animal in self-defense, and the actual Na'vi lady, girl, Mrs. Avatar, kills the creature to save him. And then she's super angry with him, like, why did you come here? This thing's going to attack you, and now I have to kill it. And he's like, yeah, thanks. So what's the big deal? And she's like crying over it because she's like, we can't eat this thing. And I just killed it for no reason because you're an idiot. So it's like that's how much respect they have for their planet. And what is their religion? Their religion is like this tree.
They worship the mother tree. Whatever,
their religion is worshiping the planet that they're on that literally binds all of them together. And their religion really is each other, basically, when you break it down. And you know, whatever, we're not going to get into creationism with Avatar, but there's a lot less noble things to worship than your planet, you know, unless you live on Saturn. But they worship nature and each other, and they just survive and they thrive in like a revolving ecosystem that is stable. And so it's like, yeah, we used to do that too. That's like,
right.
That's kind of a huge possibility to happen on Earth. And then, you know, what we have instead, and I'm not saying that, like, you know, the 300 million people in America should be living like that. But, like, with how vast the Earth is,
yes,
like, things, one of the kind of, like brain twisting ideas that you can kind of think of sometimes is, like, what else would work? And then you got to think back. We talked about this a little bit on the phone the other day, you and I, that, like, history probably isn't, you know, history is viewed as this straight line, a 45-degree angle of, you know, progression. And we haven't, there's really no reason to think that at all. Like, I'm
right.
not,
well,
I'm not
that's certainly what we've been taught. And I think as you're about to get into, we've like, as we started to peel the onion, we were like, it starts to stink. It's not really like they said it was.
Yeah. And like, why would they lie? Okay, well, how about this? If space is vast, but, you know, it's really hard to get anywhere else. Like, I'll take a quick detour and just say this. I love the idea of an expanding human race. I think that if space is what we've been taught it is, or anything close to it, that our destiny as a race is probably to expand and go to those other planets, the inhabitable ones. And I think it's just really important what we take with us. And I would hate to see us do it now, because all we would take is, like, the darkest, most depressing, controlling, you know, vibes, systems with us.
What about, but Max, let me stop you real quick. Did you remember hearing that wasn't it like NASA sent a bunch of, they sent a bunch of nude pictures of, like, people into space? Did you ever hear that?
I'm sure it was for science. I'm sure there was no insertion.
Yeah, it was like, it was obviously they were doing some serious science where they were, like, obviously sending nudes out to, I don't know, anybody out in the universe who wants them. Hey guys,
that
we're available.
That seems oddly.
But this is totally science.
Yeah, that seems oddly specific and pretty unscientific. But so if a past version of humanity was like, we think of advanced a certain way, right? Well, we're obviously much more advanced than anyone that came before us. I kind of don't think that's true, and I think that there's different ways to be advanced, and I think that there's very clear evidence of like abilities that we probably no longer have that some people have that are just extremely rare now. But you know, there's a reason they put so much chemicals in the food. There's a reason why they want us all sick and wasting away, and yes, they want our lifespans to be shorter, but, like, I think that previous civilizations probably, I think we don't understand what certain things are, like the pyramids and stuff like that. And I think there's a very good reason why it's really not common knowledge that there's pyramids on every continent, and that they all share one of two design concepts. And those design concepts, the two design concepts, aren't, like, so different. It's like, the difference
Yeah,
between
it's like cultural differences. Like it's
Right.
kind of like if we build skyscrapers here, they build them a little different in Dubai.
Right.
They build them different in China.
Right,
They
but-
build them different in Russia, but they're still everybody still knows they're the same thing.
or like the difference between like a DeWalt generator and a Kawasaki one or something like that.
Right, right,
Like
yeah.
they both have the same idea, and I think that it's very possible that that depression of Avatar comes from like this deep knowledge that like we're not really living in like the way that we're supposed to.
Yes,
And,
I think that. Yeah,
that's
for sure.
that whole. There could be a million reasons like why they lie about so much, but I think a huge part of it is like look at this and don't think about that. Think about this and don't bother looking over this other stuff. And I have a huge issue with a lot of organized religion. I think it's one of the major issues with like current day life and a lot of the problems that are going on, because it's like if we're so advanced, what's up with Israel and Palestine? Like we just can't figure that out. Like really?
Well, I think to me, and I remember talking to you about this, and I said the cool thing is like that everyone knows that JT follows JC, I follow Jesus Christ, and I think as when Jesus is saying he's the truth, it's like he really is. It's like if you dig down to the truth, you find him.
Mm-hmm.
And when Jesus came here as a man, the people he railed against the most was the organized religious people who were just pious, were only praying in public, only giving when people saw, those kind of things whose heart or who are dirty on the inside, being all clean on the outside. Looking how great I am. And I think that a lot of times that religious people would show that I'm good. Well, look how much better I am than them. So therefore I can treat these other people in a way that is not good. And I think that that's where you get into like the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, where like I was even saying, like we did a podcast on this over the weekend, and I was saying these people try to make it sound like it's Jews versus the Muslims. It's really not like that. I said I think it's obviously I think people are pulling the strings in probably like Davos, you name it, these kind of places, and they are actually, like people don't go to war against people. Nations go to war against nations. Governments go to war against other governments.
People will go to war against governments, but
people don't. But generally, people want to live in peace. People don't hate those people enough to go kill them unless they're threatened. And I think this is the thing. Like as somebody who is like not shy about being a Christian on here, I was told based on like after 9/11 and stuff, these Muslims hate you because you're American and they hate you because you're Christian.
That's what I was taught.
And it's
too.
like, but guess what? A lot of the Muslims like me.
They're not like
they
that.
like the content I make because I expose like evil, subtle evil, and what actually you find out, I was actually surprised to learn this, that the Quran actually validates the Torah and validates the Bible. I mean, obviously I believe it's got some inconsistencies in doing both of that, but they don't. Like their Quran does not tell them to go hate the Jew. It doesn't tell them to go hate the Christian. And so I think when you find that out, but it's like, but so many people in America are just ignorant of that, where it's like, oh, you either support Israel or you support Palestine, and it's like when you realize there's so many people like in the middle, getting it from both sides. It's like obviously they're just caught in the middle of this.
Yeah.
But before I wanted to mention that it's interesting in the book of like Samuel, Israel didn't have a king. Like God was supposed to be their king, and Samuel was like the prophet. And if you think about it, I was joking with my dad the one day. Like, I'm a guy who's like to work out and get exercise and do all that kind of stuff. Isn't it funny that, like, if you did work if you were like more like a hunter, you like farmed, you did work, like you took care of your property, and then you went and killed stuff, and then you cooked it and you ate it, and you would obviously be getting exercise, you'd be getting good, clean, nutritious food.
You are
you'd be getting
Brad
fresh
Pitt from Fight Club, if that's how you're living.
No, right. But so you think about that, like how much better you would be feeling and satisfied at the end of the day when you actually did something. Instead, just like Fight Club, we work jobs we hate to buy stuff we don't need, and then the FDA lets them put X amount of rat feces in our food that is acceptable, And that's what we buy with the money we make. We work all day, and then we go to the gym afterwards.
Hopefully we can burn enough of it off so we don't gain any more weight.
Right, and it's like, and then you're like literally like eating poison. When how much better off would people like men be who built their own house, got their own food? It's like took care of their families in the way that obviously we have a desire to do, and obviously be more like I'm not a tree hugger, but at the same time, like I like clean air, clean water. It would be nice to actually live in a place that was sustainable, that you didn't need, like to drive an SUV anywhere. Like you actually could just hang out where you're supposed to live. And I think that's what God has intended for us. Right. I think it's men who's twisted a system where like you have to store up all this money because you can't rely on anything else. So you have to build all this treasure. So then you're good. But then as the government's slowly taking all of it, it's like it's totally a scam.
I think there can be and has been a happy like marriage between philosophies of like, living free in the wilderness and being nomadic and, civilization. And I think, to do a cheeky little segue, I think there's very clear architectural examples of like what may have been that happy marriage between those. I think there's a way that civilization can grow and expand into big cities that aren't ugly and brutalistic and poisonous like what we have now. Because have you ever lived in a big city?
No, that's funny. Like the biggest city near me is really not all that big. So like I've been in New York City one time. I'm not too far from DC, so I've been there in like Charlotte, but I'm kind of like you could say I live like in the burbs. Like that's kind of where beach town.
I've lived in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, and it's just sad, like what a lot of these places are becoming, and it's because we don't have any ideals to strive towards. It's just like, just get what you can, extract what you can out of the system, and trash what you don't need, and hopefully you can get out soon. Or some people don't have any interest in getting out, but it's like, the corruption is so deep. Every program that gets made to try to help people that need help is just another funnel for money into like some rich asshole's pockets, and it's just depressing, these big cities. When I was growing up, I grew up in a suburb like area in eastern Washington, and I always thought I would, because I wanted to be a musician, I thought I'd be in some big city somewhere, and like every time I move lately, it's like, okay, well, we have to be near Portland or we have to be near Seattle. And I'm like, we can be near it, but I'm not living in the city. And I'm not like a tree hugger, I've never been hunting or anything like that. But I do just feel like there's this crazy disconnect if you step out of your own experience for a second and just look around at what's been happening your whole life. And you don't have to have it bad to do that. You can be having a fine time. And then not everybody wants to be out in the cold hunting or, in a tribe or whatever like that. But I think that it's just funny that we accept this idea of like, well, this is how it has to be because this is the only way to spend. And we know that because we're telling you that, because that's what we're saying has happened so far.
Well, yeah, like I said, if you think about it, and obviously if you believe, probably like Max and I believe, like this guy John D. Rockefeller, and basically these guys are the ones who created the school system. So like the richest guys in America basically developed the system to teach us certain things. Obviously not everything. Certain things we believe are probably lies, but like they want people who are teachable. They want little worker bees, and they want us to believe that this is all there is. And the carrot at the end of the stick is retirement one day, and then you can kind of do whatever you want. Then you go fishing and golfing and all this kind of stuff.
But
in the meantime,
something might happen to the bank, and you might not have that retirement money.
right. But it might take a little bit longer than you thought, because we might be slowly stealing from you the whole time. But it's interesting. I watched this one YouTube video quite a while ago. You ever watch Paul Joseph Watson? He's like a British guy, and he's kind of a political guy. And he posted this video at one time, and it was about architecture.
I don't think he's allowed on YouTube, though.
Probably not. He tells the truth.
He probably said some no-no stuff on there.
But it was interesting. He posted this video, and it was about architecture. And it was like, as a guy who was in construction, I really didn't quite, like, I didn't know how interested I was going to be in this video. But it was basically about, like, how certain places make you feel a certain way. And he was saying, like, what kind of place you want to live in depends on, like, how well you treat it. Probably how well you treat the people around you. And, if you're like in a beautiful, like, just say like one of these beautiful classic colonial looking buildings, or like just say you have a brownstone that's got all these cool details and stuff, people take care of those places because they are pretty, and then they take a little pride in where they live, and they treat their neighbors a little better. And then you look at we're calling it brutalism, is like the kind of architecture they built like after World War II.
Cement.
Yeah, and they're oppressive, and they've got no style, and they've got like water stains all down them, and it's like people just throw their garbage out on the street. They look like prisons, and people treat each other like they're in prison.
That's not an
accident. And it does seem like, because I think they said they did some kind of poll about, I think like the government in Britain was building these certain kinds of, like government assisted housing, and where they asked what people wanted, and of course they wanted like kind of individual, like kind of like townhouse looking places. And instead they built some gigantic ugly block, and eventually they have to demo that place because it was probably infested with drugs. People treated each other like garbage. And I was like, it was just an interesting thing that I never considered. Like, yeah, it makes sense to me because we restore old cool buildings, but then like the stuff they built like in the 60s, 70s, they just push that crap down.
Yeah.
Or they're just abandoned, and it just becomes some eyesore. And it's like, so how did they get it so much better back like the early 1900s and previously, these amazing places, when supposedly they had less technology, less good tools, they had less knowledge, because obviously we should have the knowledge they had. Like, how does that, like, where's the disconnect? And I guess that's where a lot of us have come to this place of like, maybe they've lied to us. Maybe certain things happen in the 1800s. Like, maybe every U.S. city, it's weird that they all caught on fire or had earthquakes, like right around the same time. Isn't that weird?
Well, there's this good TV show on Apple called Silo, and I say good. I was going to say fascinating, but it's not really fascinating. There's a couple really fascinating ideas in there. One of the ideas is that so obviously it's called Silo. It's like a apocalyptic type thing. Everyone lives in this massive silo underground, and it's like a city-sized thing. And the really fascinating part about it to me is that nobody knows why they're in there. They only know that it's not safe above ground, and nobody's like allowed to investigate why they're in there. Nobody's allowed to go to the surface and do tests because it's treated like sacrilege. And if you say, I want to go to the surface, you are executed. If you say you want to go out, I think that's the term, I want to go out. They put you intentionally in a faulty hazmat suit that will only protect you long enough to walk a few steps away from the silo entrance, and then you fall down and die.
I believe I saw a clip of this, and people are saying it's a lie. We can actually live out there. Is that the show?
Yeah. The most fascinating part about that show to me is the historical aspect of it. So in the show's lore, basically there was like a revolution. 250 years before the events of the show, there was a revolution. And after that revolution was quelled, Any object that wasn't made in the silo, past a certain point in time, was contraband and was to be collected and destroyed, and is like a high crime to have. It's like a felony, like you could be executed for it. And not all of these people in this silo just go along with the fact that there's no history other than 250 years ago there was a revolution attempt, and basically they were terrorists because they wanted to open the doors. So obviously we had to string them all up and kill them, and because of that revolution, that's why we're so strict and hard on you guys. Also, we have no history of anything leading up to that. There's nothing. It's all burnt. There's the only history is from that point on. So it would be like it would be like now if we know about the American Revolution, right? We had to fight for our freedom against England. Well, where's England? We're not allowed to talk about that. Well, what happened to them? No. Don't start asking questions. And so what's fascinating about it to me is like, a better way to control those people would probably just be to make a bunch of shit up, maybe make up where these revolutionaries came from, and maybe make up why they were so dangerous, and probably come up with a lie about what happened on the surface. Even if you don't know, probably be better to just lie about it. And of course I thought about that while watching the show because I'm delusional.
So were you starting to get sick to your stomach, and you're like,
yeah, I'm like,
that couldn't possibly be.
Well, I mean,
anything to do with real life.
I watched this like semi recently, so that's why it's on my mind. But also, I already have this feeling, and I've had this feeling because when you start with aliens, the road that aliens leads to is like, most of this is fake. Most of this is just government propaganda, and like a lot of the things that seem really, extraterrestrial and like, oh, the Roswell crash and all that stuff, it's like probably not, because like, these shadowy organizations, it's like, oh, that was just like a project to put out misinformation. People were supposed to find out about this, and so you start going like, wait, is any of this real? I would love for aliens to be real, but you start like with aliens leading to being like, oh, it could be misinformation by the government. So much of this other stuff, it kind of leads there too. And isn't it crazy how, this is why I brought up Silo, they don't have a history, and they don't have a history because they're being controlled, and just don't worry about it. All you have to focus on is the rules. But isn't it crazy how like in our history, it's almost like the good guys have won every single time.
Right. And isn't it interesting how that throughout all our history, we've had all these people trying to take over the world. Nobody's trying to do that anymore. It's like
no, because
we've eliminated that need to do that.
Because all the bad guys, when they want to take over the world, we stop them, and they're bad.
Right.
And and some of the bad guys are just, maybe they're really bad because they're trying to get back on the gold standard. And that's like,
right.
Dude,
isn't it funny how like when you actually find out like that very high profile like assassinations, it's like they have a lot to do with this guy wanted to lend money to his own people with no interest. Mm-hmm. They tried to go on the gold standard,
which is evil.
Somehow those guys got killed. I don't know what like who had anything to do with that.
Yeah, America will come and put a boot up your ass if you're trying to do some evil stuff like, help your country out and be independent. And of course there's like, there's wars and actions that like looking back on it seem very necessary, but also there's 90-year-old grandmas that are like, well, yeah, we used to be taught the earth is flat and stuff like that. So you're like, there's just so much to question. And I think one of the reasons why I don't do like podcasts or anything like that is like, I'm not an expert on anything. All I do is like find stuff that's interesting to me to question, and then I question it in video format. And so That's really all I know is that like none of us really know anything, you know. And
Well, it's hard to know, like, when you start talking about, like, when you think about, like, our lifetimes and how small they are, and you're like, and obviously our scope, and it's like talk about seeing only part of the picture, and it's like we really do have to rely on what we've been told, because most people are not going to get out and see the world. But as you're talking about that show, I can't help but think like a couple different ones, like the Truman Show. I think everyone knows, like, this guy's trapped in this TV show. He's not allowed to go across the water because he'll die. He can't swim. And then you have again, like, the Matrix. So the Matrix is like one of those ones where I did a video about that recently, and I was listening to Morpheus's speech to Neo, and he was basically like, these people are not ready to wake up, and until they do, there actually are enemies, and they'll fight like anything.
They will do everything they can to keep you from waking other people up.
Yeah, so like the people in there are the enemy, and it was like you're starting to wonder, like how much of this could be fake, and how much of it could be, you know, like how much, like it does blow your mind. What was the other one? Even like there's that movie, I think M. Night Shyamalan. Which one is the one where, like, the village, and these people are like, you're talking, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
This is like they're like
the
living.
Biggest twist
like
of
this,
all time. Like, that's like such a good. I mean, I know he gets a lot of crap nowadays, but like, I mean, when I was a kid and I saw The Village, that blew my mind. It's like,
yeah. So these people, I say, if you guys don't know the plot, like this people are like living in the 1800s, except it's not the 1800s. They're like living in the middle of like Central Park in New York City, like modern times, and they don't know it, but they're not allowed to go.
I think they're
is that what it is?
I think they're further removed than that. They're in a giant nature preserve that also has because of the nature, because of it being a massive nature preserve, airplanes aren't allowed to fly over it, and the only connection to modernity at all is the perimeter of the nature reserve is patrolled, like guarded. And so if they never go past a certain point, which they won't because they're so incredibly afraid of this other, like, opposing force that they're at peace with, they'll never go over there, and they'll never discover that their entire, I think at this point they're at like the third generation. It's like the adults that founded it, and that's a perfect topic to bring up, actually, because as you were speaking, I was trying to think of examples of how quickly perception can be changed. And it really only takes a few people having kids and telling them that things are a certain way, and then those kids having kids and telling them they're a certain way, and then the grandparents pass away. The lie's not a lie anymore. It's reality. There's no one to break the line and go,
right,
hey, actually, it's not what you think. And, you know, there's no box to get brought out of the closet with a cell phone in it anymore. You know, you get 5-6 generations down the line, and then you apply that to reality, to history. It's like any number of things could have happened, you know, 200-300 years ago, and the survivors have the survivors are, think about if you've survived like a major cataclysm, and you are depending on whatever authority is left over to provide transportation, shelter, food, water, whatever. You're going to do whatever they say to ensure that you're able to continue surviving and that your family survives. And if that is what, I mean, they wouldn't really have to tell them to say anything. It's like, here, just survive. And then a few generations later, all of a sudden we have our first written history. It's like, who's going to be around to dispute what happened, 90 years before that?
Yeah, you kind of wonder, like, when you see like the old World War II footage of like the Nazis burning the books and stuff like that, and you're like, I never really considered that they're burning history books. Like, is it interesting that could possibly be it? I mean, like, I was even, like I said, whether you believe the Earth is flat or whatever, it is interesting when people say, well, why would they lie? And it's interesting in the way you phrased it, where it was like, well, these people are not lying as far as they know, because these people are not the ones who told the first lie about whether the Earth goes around the sun or the sun goes around the Earth, because this is stuff. This would be an old lie, and this might be they were lying to somebody else. By the time we got here, now it's like this is what we people believe now, and it's very difficult to find out what's true. It's interesting as you go. I just flipped on TikTok today, and it was Eddie Bravo was talking to Roseanne Barr, and she was asking the same question: why would they lie about if the Earth was a ball or was flat? And of course, I don't necessarily buy this argument, but like Eddie Bravo's a flat earther, and he was saying because there's land out past Antarctica, and I was like, because like a lot of people, obviously flat earthers would say that Antarctica is an ice wall, and that's somewhere where the dome begins, whatever, like the firmament. But other flat earthers believe that there's lands past Antarctica, and he was saying that they want to keep us here, and I thought. I guess I could. That kind of, it just made me think of that when you were talking about like, oh, you can't go there.
I mean,
but it is interesting.
That's
when
the
you
Truman
find out like
show.
there's
That's the village.
You can't go past this point because, for one, I find this obviously this is sus. Let's just say this is sus that all these governments have this treaty that we're not going to do anything in Antarctica, which is like what? Why? Like why
Antarctica
would you have to like?
Is probably my favorite. Yeah, Antarctica is probably my favorite like mystery to think about and look into. And I don't buy the like flat Earth thing but I will say this: I had that phase where I was like, I mean, this is dumb, but I'm gonna look into it and see, like what the idea here is, because I knew that it wasn't just the thing that gets made fun of. It's like, oh, they think it's like a floating disc or whatever. I'm like, I don't think they think that, so let me look into it. And the impression I got when I looked at their ideas and then the footage from some other things that I've discerned from footage from the space station and stuff like that is I don't think it's flat. I think it's, if anything, I think it's probably just way bigger than we're told it is, and that if you can't figure out why they would lie about it being bigger, I can't help you, because that's like, property, real estate is the most valuable thing on Earth, literally.
Right.
So, yeah, I love the idea that there's more land. I'm extremely apprehensive about I think I'm so apprehensive about talking about flat Earth because I don't buy it, but also because NASA is so full of it, and I can't stand NASA as an organization. And when you know how NASA was founded, when and who founded it, and who was involved, it's pretty clear why, as a person who sticks to their morals, and I'm not somebody who won't change my mind. I change my mind all the time, but most of my ideals and morals are, Christian based and help people based. That's kind of, I don't want to see anyone hurt or put out of, house and home or anything like that. So I kind of stick to my morals and my ideals, and something inside me just retches anytime I try to read an article about the Artemis or anything like that, and it's like, so yeah, I think that's one of the reasons.
You know too much.
That's exactly. That's one of the reasons why I don't talk about any of that flat Earth stuff, is because I'm like, I do believe that NASA's lying, but when you start talking about that, it's like, oh, so you're a flat earther, so everything you're saying is bullshit.
There's only two views you can have, and I think that's where I got, and I kind of got
in the middle of it.
And obviously
it's crazy.
Well, obviously at this point, and I'm sure most people who listen to me realize that I've leaned toward it's not a spinning ball. I mean, I don't specifically say it's flat, but I mean but the way I view things now, it's like, when you get to the point, like, I know Max sent me this video, told me to watch a video, and I watched it. That when the guys on the Apollo 11 faked the ball Earth because they had some circular window in the back of the shuttle or whatever the rocket they were on, and they blacked out all the windows. They took a video of this ball, And so what they were trying, so obviously with what was it called? A funny thing that happened to me on the way to the moon. And so they were trying to show like that the Earth was round. The funny part was, obviously nobody has a clue how much of the Earth they were showing.
Yeah.
But obviously when you watch that, you realize they were only showing just a very small portion of it to make it look like it was round. So you're like, so the question would come to like a lot of people's mind. Okay, so they could lie for two reasons, because they couldn't obviously go all the way to the moon, which I don't think they did. But also, said like they wanted to show that they were far enough away from Earth to see the whole thing. Because obviously, if you were on an airplane and you only showed this much of it from over top of the ocean, you might look like you had the whole Earth.
Yeah.
So we don't know how high up they were, so they obviously didn't go all the way. And at the same time, it's like, were they trying to prove that it was the blue marble that they've been saying it was, I guess, for I don't know how long. And
well,
so really, why are they lying? But that's why that's the thing that really trips me out. And obviously these are the kind of things that got me sick to my stomach when I first started looking in this. Like, okay, so if it really is round, like why are they showing us the fisheye lens? Because like I'm not stupid now, because I see them using a fisheye lens because all the metal in there, like they're showing part of their like the space station or whatever they're using, and you can see the metal's bent too, and you're like, I'm like, okay, so why are you trying to fake that from me? Like, I mean, are you really? It's like thou dost protest too much if you're trying to show me that there is a curve when they're not high enough to show a curve.
So that, like, kind of speaks to one of the reasons that you would. It's two things, It's either it's not what they're saying it is, or they're not nearly as far away. Either they're as far away as they're saying they are, and it's way bigger, or they're nowhere
that's
near.
That's true. I mean, that's the other option, that they were really far away, but they couldn't get the whole thing.
Well, that's kind of for space to be real, which at this point I do believe that it is, and I just don't believe that it's what we're led to believe it is. And I think that there's just there's no information or no evidence about that, but there's so much evidence that they're lying about what it is. And,
right. Well, I think that's what we can all agree on.
I can't come to the conclusion that a lot of people come to, which is like, oh, well, it's flat, because when I look at the information, some of it's bullshit, and some of the terms and like equations that people use to be like, see, it's flat. It's like, well, that's outdated and that's been answered. But like my discernment when I see them faking, it's called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon by Bart Sibrel. It's still on YouTube.
Yeah, check that out. Watch that. It's good.
But it is one small detail on one of the Apollo missions that was proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to have been completely faked and lied about, and that was that mission's shot of the Earth when they were a certain distance away. They were caught faking it, just red-handed caught faking it. And they weren't caught faking being in space. They were above the Earth in some format, at some distance.
Like we don't know how far above.
But they were using a screen and a circular window to basically make it appear as though they were far enough away. They were cutting off part of the Earth using a circular black screen to make it look like they were way farther away and getting the entirety of the Earth. And then you see them pull the screen off, and this is what I don't have any strong feel. I'll say this. The shape of the Earth, the size of the Earth, I have no strong feelings about it either way. But when they pull the screen away, and the window is now completely full of Earth, what I thought when I saw that is, well, that's really, because you can tell they're very far away. So I'm like, that looks way bigger than what they're saying. So in a fantastical way, I like the idea of there being more land and that kind of. Sometimes there's like these really weird pieces of media where you're like, well, first of all, what are they trying to say? And second of all, why would they allow anyone to make this? And when I see the Truman Show, I watch it like once a year. I'm like,
I gotta watch it again.
I'm like, why are they letting this? why are they letting us see this? It is like a conspiracy theorist awakening movie. It's like you could be a totally random person and see the Truman Show a couple times and then see it like a third or fourth time and you're like, wait a second. Because the first time you're like, oh, what if there were cameras always watching me? First of all, there are. Second of all, you're like, what if this was happening to me? It's like, well, not exactly that, but it's like symbolism. It's, you know, it's very strange, and like how the light falls. The first thing that kind of makes him question it is a light falls off the I forget what it's called, but the off
I think it was it called Sirius? Or
yeah,
was it,
I couldn't remember what the frame it fell off.
But it was interesting, or as a Christian guy noticing the symbolism. I think that it was, again, like this movie was it like a symbol of like a falling star, which obviously biblically the angels are stars. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like you have a fallen angel that clues him in,
because he wakes up right then. He's still,
well, it's like he knows something's wrong now.
He holds on to the illusion, but from the moment where he holds Sirius in his hands, he never goes back. He plays it. I shouldn't even say he holds on to the illusion, because he doesn't hold on to the illusion anymore. From that moment on, when he holds the Sirius, there's a light falls into, next to him, out of the sky, and he picks it up and it says Sirius on it, and it's a stage light. And once that happens, he knows that something is a lie, just like we kind of know. Like, I don't know what it is. I could point out a bunch of really specific lies, but then that question that keeps a lot of people hung up is like, well, why? And I'm like, I don't know. And we just did.
Wasn't interesting as well that the
I have a pretty stern rule
that TV guys.
I have a pretty stern rule that I don't talk about flat Earth, but I love to talk about NASA, so it's gonna come up. But that's one of those things that it's like, when you're looking for why, at some point you're gonna go down that road. Like, well, maybe it's this. I don't know. But my favorite is that it's, there's some kind of curtain, whether it be the ice wall in Antarctica or some invisible veil that's kind of suppressing our consciousness or whatever. There's something that we can't know, and it's too difficult to perceive because it's too far outside of our perception. It's too life altering.
Yeah, no, it's well, it does seem like it does seem like obviously these movies telling us stuff, and I know that a lot of people, I think most people who like listening to me know that that's what I believe. I believe that they tell us the truth in the media. They tell us the truth in the culture, like through that kind of stuff. They don't. When I say media, I don't mean like the news. I mean like they lie to us on the news, and they tell us the truth through these like the symbolism in these movies. And so it is. I mean, it is a question where it really is. I think that like that's what this place is. I mean, I think that the whole allegory of the Matrix. I mean, I think that it has some validity to it. I really don't think we're living in a computer program, but at the same time, like, there is an artificialness to this place, and I think I said we all kind of sense it. That's like when Neo is like first, like you kind of get it, but I think we're all kind of like searching for like, I know that I don't know how many times that's happened to me where I was like researching stuff, and obviously when it comes to this subject particularly, I was partly giggling, and then I would start to be sick to my stomach, like, oh my gosh, that too, like it's like really is like how many lies have I been told. And what's fascinating, I don't know if you heard this, Max, but I was looking this up one time. I wanted to look up how high the atmosphere was. Well, guess what? There's no real good, clear answer on that for some reason. And so, like, it was somewhere between, like, 5,000 miles and, like, 200 and blah, 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 1,000 miles. And so, like, I found a scientific paper, and this was not from Flat Earthers. This was like a reputable scientific source. And they were saying, basically, the atmosphere bleeds way out into outer space, and technically these people were saying we went to the moon, but technically we were still in our atmosphere when we got there.
I'm guessing that came out after Bill Nye said you can't leave the Earth's atmosphere. I'm guessing after he said that, they were like, actually the atmosphere goes all the way past the moon. That's what he meant.
Right, and so then I started to look at it, and I was like, you know what? Actually, it's funny because like biblically, like if you believe what it says about the firmament and the stars, the moon, and the sun are all like under or in the firmament. So it's almost like sometimes people like could be talking past each other where they say there's no such thing as outer space. Now, like I said, I just don't. I don't. It doesn't make sense to me that things just get like they get to a point where it's like, and then they just float. Like that seems kind of silly to me now, because if gravity is the thing that causes everything to come down, and we know that there's gravity everywhere supposedly in space, that's what holds the planets in orbit. Why don't people just fall? I mean, like, why wouldn't they just continue to fall? Mm-hmm. And then they say, oh, well, they do, and that's why the space station continues to orbit. It's falling continuously, and I'm like,
see, I think
what?
I think we agree.
That's weird to me.
We agree on a lot of things, but that's why I enjoy talking to you, is because on a lot of things we agree, but I almost agree in like an inverse way. So it's like I agree with you that it doesn't make sense, but almost in the opposite way. I think it only makes sense, and this kind of speaks to what happens to liars, because I've been a liar. I was an addict for a few years. And when you're an addict, I was a functioning addict. So as a functioning addict that's like hiding it from his girlfriend and his parents and stuff, it's a lot of lying, and it's exhausting. And even if you're really good at lying, eventually it all comes crumbling down because the lie gets too big. And so when you lie, it has to stay that way, or you have to add on to it. And then when you add on to it, that's how you get caught. And speaking specifically about the atmosphere, it only makes sense if it is that point where you reach it, and then once you're through that, and then you're floating. That's the only way it makes sense. What doesn't make sense is, when you're in space, there's no gravity and you float, but also the atmosphere bleeds into space and goes to the moon.
Right.
Now,
yeah, you're like, well, how does it stay here at all then?
Because the only way to get that effect of floating is when, you're they do the 0G drops in planes, and that can only last for a couple seconds. And it's not because the gravity's less, it's because of like the force. So it's like, it can only be that thing, but then you have that thing come to, bite you on your back end when you're lying, which is, well, now they want to know about this, and you're like, say this, and then you say that, and then one of the fakes
tell them math.
Yeah, one of the fakes.
Tell them some confusing math.
One of the fake scientists. One of the fake scientist actors that's on your payroll. These guys crack me up, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye. They're still actors. They still have the have the ego. Their egos are out of this world. Their egos are astronomical. But so it's like NASA will come out with this thing, and they're like, yeah, it's actually this way now. And Neil deGrasse Tyson will be like, no, it's not. You're like, are you supposed to be saying that? And like, there's that clip where Bill Nye is like very sullen and seriously looking at the camera and saying, you can't leave Earth's atmosphere. There's nowhere to go. Earth is a closed system. So when I saw that, I instantly...
It was almost like, what was that about? I saw that because you said it's a closed system.
I thought there's no way this is contextually accurate. And when you hear the quote, it's like, well, how could that be out of context? Well, it's not. I looked it up, and the context was... it was like one of those situations where like college students or high school, students are like positing questions to these scientists and, like young leaders type stuff. And the young girl's question was about how like, hey, we have all this garbage and stuff and like all these issues with, waste and toxic waste and all that kind of stuff. Why can't we, send it out to space and like send it on a trajectory where we know it'll just go since space is so vast? And his answer was, you can't. There's no delivery system to get something out of the atmosphere. Like Earth is a closed system. There's nowhere to go. We have to make the best. Now I'm paraphrasing, but his idea, the idea of his retort was like, nah, we have to like keep it nice down here because there's nowhere to go, there's nowhere to send anything. Earth is a closed system, and it's like, and it reminds me of the Neil deGrasse Tyson clip where Neil deGrasse Tyson is calling out that Red Bull video where they use the fisheye lens to make.
Oh yeah,
it
he was saying
like,
you can't. Yeah, he was saying it's not
like, there's
high
no
enough to see
curvature
the
up there.
curve, even though.
It's like, okay, dude, I don't think you're supposed to say that. But the people that are in charge of like keeping the public in line scientifically, they can't even get it right according to like what we're supposed to believe. So it's like, I don't believe any of it, and I believe all of it. It's like that's how I've kind of had to go about it to stay sane in a world where it's my job to like cover stuff like that.
Well, I think it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you don't want to be. I don't think even like myself particularly. I've clowned NASA a few times, and I've made videos about like biblically about kind of what the Bible says about it. But like, I never set out to be this type of earther, like, because because obviously it's only part of my interest, and I think that like sometimes I do get a little bit like I don't really want to argue too much about things that I'm saying I'm not even sure about. So like if you want to like argue about things that we can actually have definitive proof, but I mean I think the truth is like you do have to kind of decide who you believe. Like I said, that's why I said to me it's just more comfortable to say here's what the Bible says. I believe that. I'm not sure outside of that, and I can clown on them when they lie. But other than that, I'm not going to go too far in depth. But I mean to finish this topic off, I did find it very interesting in that video about was it a funny thing that happened on the way to the moon. Was I didn't realize that Neil Armstrong the only interview he basically gave about the moon landing was the time they came back and all three Apollo astronauts were there being interviewed by the press. Did you know that, Max? I guess you saw the movie.
Yeah.
Correct?
But at the time, because what we're led to believe is that these guys were like superstars for a long time. And they gave that one interview where it's like, in the their facial expressions,
a straight up hostage
film make it seem like their families are in the back room at gunpoint. It's like, what's wrong with these guys? I mean, the first time I saw that clip, I was extremely uncomfortable watching it. I'm like, there's no description, there's no explanation. Like for anybody that hasn't seen it, just look up like post going to the moon interview. I mean, it's crazy. These guys have they look like they've all just seen their own ghosts. And he never I didn't know this until I saw the movie.
It's almost like they are telling the world's biggest lie ever. And they're uncomfortable.
And it's not what they signed up for.
And it's almost like, but what's almost interesting about it too is like it was like they were telling the world's biggest lie, and they were not originally in on that they were going to be doing that.
That's why they look like that.
That's kind of what it looks like to me. It's like that. Yeah, it looks like I was wondering that. I was like, these guys were all backslapping before they went to the moon, and they were like they look like these guys are like frat guys. They're backslapping, they're laughing, they're cracking jokes. They're probably they're like I said, they're the bells of the ball. And then when they get back, gosh, like you could imagine what people would really be like. They'd be peacocking and they'd be like going on every show and like Johnny Carson and all this kind of stuff. Except they weren't like that, because it was almost like they really thought they were going to the moon, and then they didn't. And then they had to go lie about it. And
I think that was the first, and I think that was the, if what I kind of believe is true, I think that was the first and only time that it was the first time. I think it was the only time that they didn't tell them beforehand, or didn't fake it somehow, like to the people that were involved. Because I think you can't immediately kill those people, which like it's gruesome to talk about, but let's be honest here. Like when the government needs somebody to play a part and they're not going to play it, they get rid of them. So I think he agreed to play the part, but I think he was like, yeah, I'm not gonna be your whore on television. I think Buzz can handle that, and I think he just backed out. And I think the deal was, okay, we'll keep your mouth shut. And that's what it seems like when Bart catches up to him and asks him to put his hand on the Bible and swear to God with his hand on a Bible that he went to the moon. And for men of that generation to refuse to do that, supposedly Christian men, to refuse to put their hand on a Bible and say that they did the thing that they're most famous for in life, I think that's pretty telling. And yeah,
it does seem to be. I was saying the only, if these guys knew the Bible as well as I do, I think you could have had one out, because Jesus says don't swear like that. He's like, don't swear by heaven, don't swear by anything like that, don't swear by your hair, don't swear by heaven. Let your yes be yes, and your no be no. If they'd have said that, I'm not going to swear, but yes, I did. But obviously they recoiled.
And they're angry and they're hostile.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Wouldn't it be obviously be like, hey, of course I went to the moon. You guys all saw it on the video. Like, what, like clowned on the guy, but it was like, who was it? Was it Buzz? Did Buzz punch that guy?
Yeah, Buzz punched his lights out. Buzz punched him. Yeah.
But it is interesting. So the one guy who has done the most interviews, let's just say he doesn't seem to be the most reliable witness, because he said, depending on the interview, he makes a good case that we didn't go, or he says we went. Yeah. And I'm sure you probably know this. Do you know what Buzz's mom's maiden name is?
No. What is it?
Marion Moon.
Oh my God.
Her last name, her maiden name is Moon. Marion Moon is his mother's maiden name. Look that up, guys. I didn't make that up.
Yeah, and then Buzz had that real weird thing. I think it was in like 2016 or something, where he posted a picture of like a pyramid in Antarctica and was like, "It's coming. There's like a great evil here," or something like that. And then he deleted it, and then the cleanup was like, "Oh no, he never posted that because it's not on his Twitter anymore." It's like, well, yeah, he deleted it, but like people got screen grabs of it. It's very bizarre.
Wouldn't that be the massive plot twist? That NASA wasn't faking everything; they just weren't going up. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen these videos. You ever see like on like the Disney logo when like Tinkerbell whatever does the star kind of goes up like in a big old curve?
Yeah.
What if they were sending the rockets down to Antarctica, like a place that was maybe beyond all the icy stuff?
I don't exactly have an answer to what I think it would be, but I think Antarctica is the most important place on Earth to that class of people, and I couldn't tell you why, but what I do know is that.
Well, do you remember? So this is the crazy thing, and I know a lot of people know. A lot of people know about the Admiral Byrd, like his diary, that talks about the insanity of like Nazis flying saucers and like men from inside the Earth, from the hollow Earth and everything. Like absolutely bonkers stuff. I don't know if anybody's verified any of that because it could be made up. But what I found interesting is there's a famous old TV interview when he's up there in years, and he talks about an unexplored area bigger than the United States on the other side of the South Pole, and he says that this place is very vast in resources, like such as like oil, coal, and even hinted at possibly uranium. Yeah. And so like he's not saying this like a crazy person. He's saying this like obviously just straight up factual, and like that is sort of interesting. Like especially around that time. This is why I always found like the whole Arctic Treaty sus, that like why wouldn't the nations after World War II, who obviously could give a crap about trees and penguins, obviously there is no trees down there, I don't think, like they would just go get all the resources they could down there. So why would they make a deal with other countries to not do that?
So it's really interesting that you bring that up, because I've kind of taken a break on it, but before I started the Maui video, I found, I don't know, it could be the same interview you're talking about. First of all, it's so interesting because I believe this was in like 1952 or something, but to see television from back then is so crazy. It's not what you picture when you think about like, oh, what did a talk show look like back then? But I saw this interview with him after he returned, And in the interview, they have footage of the stuff he's talking about. He has footage of non-ice.
Oh, really?
And they have footage of trees. And it's barren. It's barren looking still. But there's... and it's black and white. But you can see where it goes from... you know... I don't know if dirt is the right word, but like hard, icy ground. And then goes into like dirt and like low foliage. You can see it in the footage, and I was kind of the
I know.
kind
I
of
do think
angle-
I want to say that one of his journals he talks about doesn't he talk about like green lush places and stuff.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. Is that like there are? He said that he named like the size of the area, and I can't remember what it was, but he said something like it was the size of New York State or something like that. That was surrounded by ice, but this was mountainous and had vegetation. And so you could read in the journals and stuff, which a lot of people have said are like fake recreations with like stuff added in. But he's on television saying like the big crazy thing he said was that not all of Antarctica was ice, and that they made multiple excursions, and that they have I'm now more of it's coming back to me. He's talking about the types of film they had to use, and they're using cameras like video, tape cameras, not tape but film cameras, and they landed there and they put some stuff down so that they could refuel their planes. And I mean, like, there was a substantial...
Well, that's interesting.
There were substantial expeditions into Antarctica that he was in charge of, and then they put him in a nut house and he died. So,
Yeah, that sounds interesting, and I almost kind of like, it sounds likely to me that if you say like the real insane parts of his diary is that part of the psyop, is that you throw in Nazi spaceships coming from the inner Earth in there, and now you disregard, like, obviously the stuff about it being green in places, that doesn't seem like, you forget about that because like it's all the that gets pushed to the side when you find out about all the other weird crap he's talking about, and like, so then
I believe one of the things he was talking
like,
about
the psyop
was,
where now we can dismiss it all.
I think, and this is kind of like might be a light bulb for some people, but I think like I would like to believe that because there was Operation High Jump and Operation Fishbowl, which kind of makes it seem like there was a need. He did request for like more military support after his first expedition, but I think he was also talking about there being a lot of oil there. So like it's kind of like you have all these crazy claims, and then other claims like there being a inhabitable landmass the size of New York State that seems like it has a lot of oil under it, and you're like, well, yeah, that's probably like a more realistic explanation for why they wanted him to not talk about it or whatever,
Well, it's interesting if you think about it like this, and this is like, again, this is conspiratorial, but I guess all this stuff is. Like, you ever heard like diamond mines? So like, if they release if De Beers and all those places release all the diamonds, they'd be worth nothing because they're really not that rare.
Right.
Same thing with like oil. When you find out, like, do you remember when like Trump and them, like he actually, like, they pumped a lot of oil and shale and all that stuff, and then there was a time on the stock market where like literally barrels of oil was like in the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if you think about, like, again, you go back all the way to the topic of who started the school systems. Remember that guy who was was big in the oil business, John D. Rockefeller? Imagine if that family said, heck no, nobody's drilling down here.
Yeah.
Because this stuff is so, like, that's what they've tried to tell us. And I remember my buddy Luke, Voice of Reason, did a video about this, about them trying to say this is fossil fuel. So obviously all these dinosaurs and all this stuff created this oil, and there's a very limited amount of it. And we're going to run out of it one day. What if they said, no, that stuff, there is so much of that stuff, obviously, we could live a million years, we'd never run out of stuff.
There's so much of that stuff, and there's so much of it, not because there's so much of it, but because the Earth is producing it. That's like the other idea of it.
That's about it's about
all you really have to do is know how to tap
like
into it, and bam, you got it. And then all of a sudden, an oil baron is kind of out of the job at that point. If anybody can tap oil, and sell it.
I think isn't that's the ultimate conspiracy that we've all wondered. And I think that this maybe even gets back into like the idea of like the pyramids in the times before, when was there this type of energy that was not like that you have to go to the pump, get it, you have to like pay for your electric bill. Was there this possibly a self-sustaining energy source like magnetism, like vibrations, any kind of a thing like that was like we would not be beholden to these people. What if we could go, you could go explore more of this place, you wouldn't be stuck the way you are, you wouldn't be like trapped in here thinking like, well, I'm gonna freeze to death in the wintertime if I don't pay my bills.
I think so.
This stuff is actually more readily available.
I think that's kind of my after 10 years of looking at stuff, and when I say my theory or my opinion or whatever, it is just that, and it's not like all day I walk around going, this is what it is, it must be. It's like, but when I think about what it all means and what it all could be, that's kind of what I come back to. I'm kind of like, it doesn't ring true to me that this is the peak of civilization. It seems that there's very clear evidence that something else was going on. And when you hear about, like, this is something I wanted to talk about when we were on the phone the other day, but it's probably best that we didn't. You hear the story of Atlantis, and like the reason we know about Atlantis is very specific. It's like Plato's like uncle or something was in Egypt.
Yeah, it was Herodotus. It was Solon. I think Solon was the one who went to Egypt, and he told Herodotus, and I think Herodotus told Plato. So we even got like a game of telephone between Egypt and all the way to Plato.
And what did do you remember the Egyptian guy's name that was talking to Solon? I don't remember his name.
Oh, now you've stumped me there.
Yeah. So he said something along the lines of like, "You're a young people. Like your civilization is young."
Yeah, I do know he said that. Yeah.
You have no idea. And then he said something along the lines of like, "We don't even know when this stuff was built. Like the things that Solon was asking him about in Egypt, he was like, we don't know. It's too old." And then you hear the kind of idea that like Cleopatra was alive closer to the invention of the iPhone than she was the pyramids being built. It's like,
yeah, that's one of those ones that does blow your mind, like when you think about that. Like, that doesn't make sense to us.
When Cleopatra was walking around Egypt, those pyramids were as ancient to her as they are to us in the grand scheme of things. So it's like, it's so long ago, we really don't have a firm grasp on like what they were for. Now they're saying it kind of seems like the pyramids were never built. Not only are they not tombs, it kind of seems as though they weren't really meant to have people inside them. Like they have like what seems.
I firmly believe that.
They have like what kind of seems like maintenance tunnels, but not. It's not like this big. They aren't these big grand things. Like as far as like it doesn't seem. People are saying it doesn't seem like a place you would bury a king. So it seems. I think what was going on is that they were advanced in a way that we can never. Like it would take. You'd have to learn just how to understand how advanced they were. Like you couldn't even put it in the terms that we would be able to understand in modern times. And I think that was probably based around. I like the idea of ether. Like it does seem like certain buildings and contraptions and inventions and stuff like that were not. It doesn't make sense why they're there anymore. And then when you kind of take into mind that there might have been a substance like a force of nature that we just don't have anymore or is thinner, less abundant for whatever reason. And then kind of something I've discerned over time is like, the pyramids being in an alignment with the stars across the earth on all continents.
Yeah, like right at like basically like the Giza plateau and those three major pyramids being basically like lined right up with like Orion's belt.
Right.
Is a bit odd.
And then them being so specifically designed to match up with like the circumference of the earth and all these different things. And then all of these ancient people having tales of their ancestors emerging from within the earth kind of led me to believe that,
that's one of those weird ones.
Right.
Yes.
And that's not like one or two. It's like most of the ancient civilizations on earth, like in India, I believe in China, a lot of Native American tribes have this idea that their ancestors
almost all the
came from inside
like
the
all
earth.
the Native Americans. I think it was like was it like the Aztecs? I remember they had a like 7 sacred tribes or something like that all lived in the earth. And I was like, because I've talked about this before. I said that's a very odd thing to make up.
Yeah.
Like if you were going to make up a legend about the people, my people, here's what I would say: we came from heaven. We came from the heavens. we descended down to a mountaintop, and then we came down. I would not say we came from inside the earth, because said, why would you lie about that? Unless
I would say
there was something true about it. You know what I found interesting? Have you ever heard? Oh, go ahead.
I would say wherever we came from, we were the tallest, coolest. We were all shredded with 8-packs, and
right.
we were the smartest.
Yeah,
and
we were
funniest.
the best.
But all that stuff kind of leads me to believe that they may have been using the pyramids, and they had a very good idea of where to go, because we know now that there's been like 12 major cataclysms that's like killed everyone on Earth almost, and then the people that are left over kind of repopulate. And wouldn't it just be so convenient if like only a small number of those in control knew that was going to happen? And you can't really have the pyramids powering up. Like, you can't really hide that because they're above ground. I think the pyramids are as much underground as they are above ground. But
you could imagine those people. They burned down Chicago and all those cities. They've tried to burn down the pyramids a couple of times. It just didn't.
Yeah.
They really don't have the fire to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they try. What's interesting is there actually is one pyramid that looks like a bomb hit it. You ever seen that one? Mm-mm. It's like partly destroyed. But you can imagine what could do that to a pyramid because they're so dense.
Only
I think you were saying
pyramid.
like that. Obviously, I agree. Like they're like, why would you build this thing that is so big yet so dense? And what's interesting, it has the shafts inside it are granite, so they're not made of the same thing, and they're like super. Obviously, like everything else, like in those places, they're exact and all this stuff. It's like, it does seem interesting. I've always wondered, like, with the shafts going in, like, these weird places, and then you have, like, supposedly the king's chamber. Is it possible there was some kind of turbine in there that got moved somehow because of,
I think
the forces of the earth? Because it's like, it does seem like a giant machine could have been in there.
I think we get so caught up on how they were built that we don't really think about why. And it's like, hey, they had slaves. You can pretty much do anything.
they can, obviously, we know they can build anything.
You can pretty much build anything if you have a workforce that never, when they get tired, you just work them to death and you put a few more in. I don't really buy that. It was just, slaves with their primitive ancient tools, but they did have like genius level engineers that probably could have figured out how to get people to be able to do a lot of that work. But it kind of doesn't matter because we don't have a clear idea of what they did or what they were capable of. And then there's
right. What isn't interesting too when you think about like, so they just believe you just have this completely just gigantic force to just build stuff all the time. Obviously, it still costs money in whatever currency it takes. So obviously, that's a massive amount of people to feed and to sustain while they do all the work. And also, guess what? Throughout time, people have revolted against wicked people who force them to do things.
Yeah.
So the kind of people who could move all those blocks would kind of be dangerous if you didn't actually keep track of them.
Also,
it's like the whole thing just is so, like I said, it's just such a nonsense idea that they just got a bunch of people to do it.
Also, according to less ancient Egyptians, more ancient Egyptians had a really big problem with these sea people that would come and raid them and just absolutely wreck them whenever they came around. And so it's like, so if that was happening, wouldn't it be better to like have your slave people be like your army or something, and not building a giant tomb that costs like multiple lifetimes to
right
build?
Well, it is. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? It does seem like a time of maybe great prosperity where it's like you could do these kind of things, because like I think obviously it makes more sense if you did have a lot of people working on some project, if it was for the common good. Possibly would you all get together if it was something that benefited everybody, not some dead guy?
Well, see,
not some monument to a dead king. I mean, that makes no sense, because it's kind of like, what do you?
The dead
what about
king
me?
that's ordering you all to work to your death. But if you're building ostensibly what is a life preserver for the earth, then you're probably going to be like, yeah, let's go, let's do it, let's push these 5-ton blocks.
Right. So the one thing that was interesting when you were talking about the Native American legends about them being in the earth was making me think about this. This was a crazy thing I looked into about like the Grand Canyon. I'm sure you're familiar with. There's like the J.G. Kincaid, and there's this stuff about like there's caves inside the Grand Canyon that have like some kind of like people say Egyptian because there's like mummies and stuff in there. But what I looked into it was more like Tibetan type stuff,
Yes.
like Hindu type religious artifacts in there. And so what made me like actually I thought was crazy what I started to look into was, so if you think about this, okay, now let's get nuts here for a second.
You want to get nuts?
Over in India, let's get real nuts here. So they believe a lot of their mythologies are like of Shambhala and Agartha, like this kind of mythical place that's inside the earth, and like their gods are down there. Think of like Land of the Lost, crazy stuff. Okay, so interesting. Once again, it's an interesting mythology. And what's interesting is like, so a lot of people, when they talk about the Nazis and their racism, they were talking about Aryans. And people get it twisted. They always think that Aryans have blonde hair and blue eyes. The Aryans were a historical people, and they were like brown people. They're like people. They're like
closer to
from
Iranians.
India. Like,
Yeah.
right, yeah. They were not blonde hair, blue eyed people. They were like, yeah, they were darker skin, darker complexion, and so like you even think about like the weird Hindu mythologies about like blue people and all this kind of crazy, almost exactly where James Cameron got the Avatar stuff from. So stick with me. So what was interesting, and I found this out, I don't know when, but they said the German people had this kind of fascination with Native American people. And I was like, I was thinking like, why would they care about Western stuff? Well, here's where it ties in. Did they believe that our Native Americans had there was some kind of descendants from the Aryans?
Yeah.
So think about that. So you get where I'm getting into? Mm-hmm. Is it possible that they did come from out of the earth, and there was peoples that literally could go from Asia to North America by some kind of underground cave system? And I was like, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, I know the Nazis believe some insane things, but is it possible that could be there could be any kind of truth to that?
Well, I think
how did these people get here? And I don't believe that crap about there was some land bridge from like, from like Russia to
nonsense.
from Russia to Alaska. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard, because just consider this for a second.
Can we go under the continents?
People walk through this friggin'. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, it was funny at one point. I remember it was.
If you're in the ocean, can you pull up to America? And so here's your boat, and America's right here. Can you go like this and go under the continent?
No. See that's what's funny. Who is it? Who is the
bridge?
famous creationist? Well, that's what they're saying. The funny part about it was like, yeah, like wouldn't there be a lot of remnants of that thing? Because it's almost just like people are just so ignorant. They look at a map and they say, oh, it looks like it looks like it almost connects,
Yeah.
but now it doesn't anymore. But like, who was it? Gosh, I keep on forgetting the guy's name. But he was talking about like this idea of Pangea, and I thought about this too. Pangea is stupid. It almost looks like the continents kind of fit, so therefore there were once some mega continent.
Imagine
And
if
it's
they did. Yeah.
Guys, the continents already connect under the sea.
Yeah.
They're
It's
not
all
lily
connected.
pads.
No.
They don't float around.
That's what I mean
Yeah, so
by
it's
can
like,
you
so
go
obviously,
under it?
is it? Yeah, you can't, because it's like but it's possible that under the rock and under the sea there could be a tunnel system. But yeah, when people try to start talking about like that people walked across from Russia to Alaska, then walked down Canada, isn't it funny? Like, if that happened, wouldn't there be a lot more people in Canada? Wouldn't there be a lot more people in America?
They just kept
so
going.
they walked all the way, and they continue to walk. They just walked all the way to South America.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they have stopped somewhere up in like the Northwest, which is pretty nice?
What?
I don't know.
What's I love if anyone is super interested and wants to know everything that you can know about this right now, I don't know if you're familiar, but I would go to Mr. Mythos YouTube channel.
I've watched a few of his. Yeah, he's got some good content.
Yeah, and it's almost exclusively about Agartha. And the crazy thing, and this is not some like fantastical. I mean, the topic is fantastical, but all of his work is like extremely well vetted and researched and sourced. And it's mostly that kind of stuff where it's like, before a topic is known to be taboo, like before a topic has been kind of swatted down, it's like, hey, we're not talking about that. There's always like news stories that come out about it first before it's like, hey, we're not talking about that. That's not supposed to have happened. And Agartha, the idea of like civilizations springing out from and stemming from inside the earth, I mean, it's like completely wide-ranging across the globe, across the realm. Might not be a globe, but
what did you just say?
it makes a lot of sense. Like, and then you think, oh, what? So they just like went in the earth and walked to North America, and you're like, it might have taken 3 generations. You know, they might have lived. They probably did live. If that's their, you know, creation, like origin myth, it didn't come from nowhere. And the really fascinating thing is that a couple of these civilizations have stories about other beings being down there. I think the Mayans called them like ant people, and that they were like at constant odds with the ant people, and they had to come up at a certain point. It wasn't like, hey, we're gonna go down.
What about like on like South Park? I was gonna say, what about in South Park? I know, have you seen South Park? They used to always like have like they would have certain weird episodes. They would start talking about crab people. And of course, the crab people came from inside the earth. Mm-hmm. Obviously, and everybody. Okay, we'll just say it. Obviously, reptilians. Like people talk about reptilians being in the earth. Isn't it interesting? Like what was it in the movie? The show, like the Land of the Lost. There was the that weird looking reptilian thing.
They had a name.
Gosh, man, I'm at a loss for remembering stuff today.
I love that movie, first of all, but second of all, it is interesting that that's like their archetype for the inner Earth creature is a reptile. Yeah,
it looks awful lot like what people consider what aliens look like. When it's like, and I've made that point, and I guess I'm not the first person to say that, so I heard that from somebody else. Isn't it interesting when you think about like what a gray alien looks like, that they have these big eyes, almost like they came from some place that there's not a lot of sunlight. Mm-hmm. So maybe they had bigger eyes so they could see better in the dark.
Yeah.
And
I also
like I said, again, like if you think about it, how much that the stuff that would be inside the earth would be alien to us, because it's not from here. It's not from this terrain. It's sort of kind of extraterrestrial.
Well, it also is interesting because it's like, well, it may not be that the reason why people might have come up from the inner earth in different areas, like, if the Native Americans share some kind of genealogical heritage with Indians or Iranians or something like that. But and I believe they do. I can't remember the exact like genealogical ties, but I've heard something along those lines. Isn't it interesting that, like, well, maybe there's several different areas within the earth, and these Native American tribes and like the Mayans and stuff, they have these legends of the ant people, and it's like maybe that's why they came out in different places, is because they were like trying to escape from those things that are inside the earth. And and now look how much time has gone by. We're talking about something that could have happened 1,000,000 years ago, and so it's like maybe they're not around anymore.
We have no idea. We have no concept of that. Well, I think that's what I remember. That I forgot to even get into that, but that was why I started to question. I was like, okay, so like I did a video about Columbus obviously didn't discover this place, and no, it's not named after Amerigano Vespucci. That's just stupid. I mean, like I got to be honest, like that idea that we've been told that there's not one continent on this planet, or on this earth, that's named after some guy. So they named 2 continents after some guy's first name. We don't name things after anybody's first name.
No.
So I talked about it. So the natives called it Amaru or Amaru Ka. That was their god. Their god was named Amaru.
That's so much.
It was
cooler.
The plumed serpent. Okay, yeah, and so what was fascinating to me was, okay, so like then I stopped believing that whole idea. Does anybody really think? I mean, just think about this for a second. So Christopher Columbus, they knew a lot about the world by the time he was sailing the ocean blue. Why would anyone think it was faster to go to India to go the opposite direction?
Yeah.
Does anyone, like, again, you following me? Let's just go the other way. It's got to be faster. So they go the other way, and he lands somewhere, I guess, maybe in Haiti, some kind of an island down in the Caribbean or something. He thinks he's in India. Okay, so how long did he think he was in India, where he decided to call everybody he met Indians? Did he realize he couldn't trade with them because he was not actually in India, and that was he was looking for a better trade route?
Yeah.
Right? No, so then you have the Spanish. The Spanish go all the way down into South America, and they are like basically, looking for gold and whatever else they're doing down there. Okay, so then by the time we settle North America, obviously a lot of the Europeans go into North America, they can continue to call these people Indians. Okay, at some point they had to realize this was not India at some point they noticed that it was not India. Why did we continue to still call them Indians for hundreds of years?
It's like one of those glaringly obvious things.
They were related to Indians, the Indian people, right? Because like I said, you think about it, it's interesting if it's one dumb guy says, "Oh, like look at that bozo, he thought he landed in India." Well, let's name both continents after Amerigano Vespucci, even though his name is not America. Let's name it Amerigo. Let's name it America. And let's name all the people here after Indians. It's not India.
And like
that's weird, unless there is actually some connection to the people from India.
Yeah, like not only did they, and they, it's almost like glaringly obvious, like in your face. It's like they were well aware that they had a tie to those people, and maybe they were shocked. Maybe they're like, "Wow, there's Indians here," but they didn't. It's like the goal is to make you believe that they were stupid instead of they were actually like way smarter than we give them credit for. And they're like, "Wow, that's crazy. There's Indians here." And they probably knew. I mean, they knew they weren't in India.
Yeah.
They probably were like, "Oh, we might have gotten a little off course."
They
but
had
there's
to know.
Indians here. There are Indians here, and obviously they know they're not Indians because they didn't speak the same language. They had different languages. But like,
I know that's what I'm saying. Like, can you think Columbus lands on a small island, and he thinks he's in India. For how long did he think he was in India?
Yeah, and also
long enough where he went all the way back.
Also,
thought he was still in India.
If he discovered it, they're like, "Oh, he named it after Amerigo Vespucci." It's like, wouldn't he name it Columbus or Columbia or something like that? And it makes a lot more sense that it would be named after something that the natives are constantly referencing to it as.
Right, exactly. Like did they? I mean, obviously at this point they realize. I mean, for one thing, when you think about it, like there was massive pyramids in South America. Okay, nobody discovered anything. This place was obviously well founded by very advanced people a long time ago. And it was interesting. Once again, those people didn't build those pyramids; they were already there, and these people were living around them. Like, and again, they had the very similar legends of like the giants did it. I think that's what the Aztecs actually talked about, a time where they came up out of the earth and there was giants on the earth, and those are the ones who built all the megaliths down there.
And they were like,
isn't that weird? That story comes up again.
I think they had some stories of, they were like, oh yeah, you know how I think it was Columbus that was writing in his journal. He's like, these people would make good slaves. They're so friendly. He said something like that. But I think there was actually like the same idea about some of the giants that like the Aztecs or Mayans or whatever encountered. They were like, they're weirdly friendly and they kind of like do what we say. I think we could like kind of dominate these people.
Yeah. I think it was in Amerigana Vespucci actually tried to kidnap some giants.
Yeah, I know. I don't.
He wrote about this. So this we're going to talk about this in our their upcoming Ancient Angels series. But there's actually some of the craziest things that most people don't realize is that, okay, so if you believe all the stuff you read in your history books about these famous explorers, well, in those same journals, they wrote about giants and stuff like that. Like, so when you think about it, the funny part, I've made this point before. I'm like, okay, so if you are an explorer and you're like Magellan and you're the guy you sailed all the way around the world, okay, so this is what like you want everyone to know you by. It doesn't do you a lot of benefit to write lies about giants and myths in the same thing you wrote about. If you were lying about anything, it was the fact that you went all the way around the world, because that makes you sound great. It doesn't make like they don't want it. You don't want to like basically undercut your whole reason you're doing anything.
Well, it's like when Bird came back from Antarctica. He didn't say anything about UFOs and Nazis on TV. What he said was, there's more land and we think there's oil there. It's like you don't say like the fantastic. You don't like make up fantastical stuff. You talk about the assets or possible threats or something like that you may be facing. And yeah, it's so interesting the way that, you know, we talk about, we have a lot more access to information now worldwide, but what we don't have is like the everyday skills that a lot of these people had. And then you think about the kind of person you have to be. Talking about them going intentionally the wrong way to get to India made me think of this. It's like, think about the kind of person you have to be like, yeah, I'm going to go to lobby the kings and queens of the greatest nations on earth, and they're going to put me in charge of going and getting them new spice trade routes for the most expensive, financially beneficial things to their countries. And I'm going to go the wrong way on purpose, and I'm not going to understand that I'm not where I'm supposed to be.
It's totally going to be faster.
And then I'm just going to make up some stuff about giants, and I'm just going to lie about the whole thing. It's like, no, these people weren't stupid. They were smarter than most of us in most ways. Like they had some probably pretty archaic, barbaric ideas about certain things. Like, I don't know if it was Columbus or Vespucci who was like, hey, these people would make great slaves, but those were the kind of realities they were dealing with at the time. But yeah, these people were like geniuses compared to a lot of us. And it's funny that like the narrative that we're supposed to believe is like they were stupid racists. It's like, and that's why they did what they did. It's like, I don't know if I believe that. And I don't.
Yeah, maybe there's a little bit more nuance than that.
Yeah, but man, I'd love to have, like, maybe next time or something, because that's a whole nother thing, and I'd like to do a little bit of a research beforehand. But the whole giants thing is just fascinating to me, because it's like, it's just not that crazy. We know there's other types of humans that, not humans, but like other humanoid creatures that we're allowed to know about. Like Neanderthals,
right? Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, and of course that's obviously. Yeah, that's my theory. It's is it likely that that is kind of the cover for there is these other skeletons? Are they possibly this? Are is these possibly giants? And then but you can because it's like they're human, but they're not quite human. I think, and that's what's interesting about some of the giant mythology is there was a lot of incest between them, and I think that's why a lot of them were deformed in certain kinds of ways. Is it possible that that's why that they are like they look like very primitive, but maybe they weren't? Because it's interesting, like some of the I forgot what it was saying. Like I think it. Well, no, they're not, and I think that's the interesting part about like the like what we talk about a little bit is that if you had what we believe that angels mated with women created this superior race to humans. Well, at some point the divine lineage gets removed, and you might have people trying to keep those bloodlines, like keep the divine bloodlines as much as they can, which would start interbreeding, and then eventually you'd have deformed looking, basically cannibalistic giants, and that's why God floods the earth. Is it possible that that's something that kind of happened where it's like they still must retain some kind of advanced knowledge over regular people, and that's why the megaliths are like unexplainable to our own brains, and they have a different kind of understanding of how the world worked. I mean, I think it makes sense because, again, like why would people in South America have these legends that are the same legends that go all around the world, and we don't really have a better explanation for it because we know that. Isn't it interesting? Like they try to say like the pyramids that were built in Mexico and also South America were built much later than the ones in Egypt because that doesn't make sense to their timeline. But if you think about it, the pyramids in South America are more impressive than anything that was built in Europe.
Yeah.
So how come these people did not advance at the same rate as the Europeans when at some point they were more advanced because they were building things the Europeans couldn't build? Unless, once again, there's this disconnect because there was this time before when, who knows, then something happens and we don't know what happens, but all we know is that there's this story all around the world of, hey, there was this time before when there was an advanced people and ... Now we don't know anything about it.
And I this might be a little fantastical, but two things here. First of all, according to the currently accepted historical timeline, I don't remember there being a lot of information in there about the Europeans stopping to ask the Mayans or Aztecs very many questions about their architecture. Second of all, how old is this, by the way? Second of all, that's kind of...
Well, no, actually, I said I did. There was... If you go into, like, I saw that one video. If you've seen, Graham Hancock has, it's called, like, Ancient Apocalypse. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned specifically that there's this pyramid in Mexico. It's called Cholula. And I think they said the base of it is, like, 3 times greater than the base of the Great Pyramid in Giza.
Yeah.
It's way bigger.
Yeah.
But it's not as tall. And it's all covered with, like, grass and dirt. It's like looks like a big hill. The Catholics just happened to put their church on top of it, interestingly enough, and there's caves that go down in it. And so the Aztecs told the conquistadors that the giants built that, and then the sky god rained down on them, flooded them, and killed them all.
Wow.
I mean, when you
Kinda
hear that story,
up.
you're like, oh, that sounds very similar. And it's funny. So Graham Hancock, who believes some of the myths, and he's a little more open-minded than like your regular Egyptologist, but he said perhaps they were talking about intellectual giants.
Yeah.
Or maybe they were talking about giants. Like maybe they meant just exactly what they said, and outside of an alternate explanation, like, I mean, it's like I said, it's strange that, I mean, I think that's where you get into it as well. That I believe, you see, Christopher Columbus has that cross on his flag. I mean, it was funny because he was sailing for Spain, but he has the Knights Templar cross on his sails, right? And if you think about the Knights Templars, they obviously one of these secret societies collecting relics. I think it's very likely that one of the reasons they went to South America, probably because they did know about, and they went to Mexico because they did know about all these pyramids down there, and I think that they were probably looking for stuff. they're probably looking for hidden knowledge.
And what an easy thing to obscure in history. It just the motive and objectives. Let's just say they went for different reasons, and yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say is, God, what is the big museum? That's like
Smithsonian.
The Smithsonian. Okay, so you talk about giants. Well, where's the remnants of them? And then you have lots of stories, and like in the grand scheme of things, like semi recently American history of like, oh, this guy found a giant human skull, giant human bones and stuff, and then it's like he gave them to the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian is like, no, never happened. And do you know how we can prove it never happened? Look at our collection. There's no giant bones. Okay, so keep that in mind.
Right.
Keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I forget where, it was somewhere in America. This guy found a like woolly mammoth like grave site where there was like tons of woolly mammoth bones, and there's like, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through to like prove that or whatever. And part of that was he was gonna give them to the Smithsonian to have them like analyzed and stuff. Well, months go by, and he's like, hey, where's my woolly mammoth bones? And they're like, we don't have them. And then somebody else noticed that, like, the Smithsonian, or it leaked somehow, that the Smithsonian had been dumping bones into the Hudson River. And there's now people pulling out
oh my gosh,
woolly mammoth bones worth $15,000. There was like a small contained gold rush amongst divers in the Hudson River because they were going in there and pulling out woolly mammoth bones. And this guy's going, hey, those are my woolly mammoth bones.
Gosh.
And so they just dump anything that they perceive to, and so it's like, so it's not exactly connected, but it's like, okay, we have evidence, in newspapers and stuff like that, of people claiming, I have found the remains of giant humans and I have given the bones to the Smithsonian. And the Smithsonian saying, no, never happened. But then you also have right now, like, contemporary evidence of people saying, not even saying, just like, hey, I straight up found these bones, and then the Smithsonian lost them, and now divers are pulling them out of the Hudson River. So it's like, that's the other point I wanted to make is like, if there was this advanced race, what happened to them? And if it was something that was intentional, then that means someone did it to them. And I don't know about you. I don't know how, I'm still a Christian, but I don't believe in like organized religion. I think a lot of it's just evil. But so I do kind of allow myself to, I think I'm maybe just not so tied to it. Like I do have like a relationship with a higher power, and like I do believe that, Jesus died for our sins. But I also believe that there's so much we don't understand about ourselves. And I'm totally not like a do as thou wilt guy. Like, I hate that. But
that's good, because that's satanic.
Exactly. So there's an aspect of like spirituality where it gets to a point where you're like, that's kind of dark. I don't know about that. But what I do allow myself to do is like have kind of thought experiments, and it's almost like I've almost kind of like left my body a couple times while doing that kind of stuff. And something that I've done thought experiments on is like, I feel, and I've always felt that there's like some hidden entity. There has to be something. I almost feel like it can't be man, and I feel like it can't be mankind. There's something going on, and for a long time I thought it was parasitic. Like, I thought it might actually be like some kind of parasitic organism that gets into people's heads because, I've done, I've stolen, I've cheated, I've lied, I've, done drugs and stuff like that. And I don't have a worm in my brain, but so I understand evil, but then you see people doing stuff where you're like, it can't be money. They have all the money in the world and they have all the power and all the control. why? And I know that their game is a long one, and longer than we could perceive. And when I really do that thought experiment, where you're like, what is it? It's almost like you can kind of see why they cover up the ancient past. I mean, I don't think they have to cover it up much anymore because it's so ancient. But you're just talking about Graham Hancock and his reservations about even accepting that it's actual giants. Well, there's a reason for that, because Graham Hancock has spent his entire life in the pursuit of knowledge, and he's been alienated and ostracated from the scientific community for his entire career. And so I can accept and understand that he's made certain, exceptions where he's like, I can't say giants. So it's still being covered
I'm
up.
already maligned. It's like I'm maligned enough already.
Yeah.
If I say I believe the giant stuff, then I might as well be calling myself a flat earther.
And I'll also put this out there. Graham Hancock has risked his life on multiple occasions trying to learn about ancient history. Like there's those.
Oh yeah, no, he's hardcore. Yeah, I've enjoyed listening to him.
There's that structure in the water off of the Japan coastline.
Yeah, I've seen that he was hardcore. They were saying with the current down there diving down
could kill you.
Insane.
Like really, really easily could kill you.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyways, it's like you can kind of see why, if you can think about this ancient people that was so much more advanced than us, or what happened to them. It seems to me that they kind of had it figured out. I don't think they could stop cataclysm. I think that the Earth is going to do what the Earth is going to do, and maybe it is, a higher power saying, hey, these giants are screwing each other and they're like brother and sister, and we got to get rid of them. Or, it could be that, and, the Earth just has a cycle, and it's going to mud flood, and it's going to flood, and the mountains are going to come tumbling down on these civilizations. But it seemed as though they had some kind of system for defense and survival. And so it would almost kind of seem that whatever entity or group, that is covering everything up and in control now and committing evil, heinous acts on humanity at large scale could have some benefit to covering up a better way, that maybe the ancients.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Embraced.
It's interesting, and I'm gonna get real nuts on you right here before we end this thing. Have you ever seen the first G.I. Joe movie? And I don't mean the crappy ones with The Rock in there. Have you seen those?
Is there like
G.I. Joe the movie, the classic cartoon from the 80s?
I'm sure I've seen it, but I can't recall like the plot.
Well, this is interesting if you haven't heard this. So this is crazy. So G.I. Joe and Transformers were very formulaic shows back in the 80s. Obviously, I think they were designed to sell toys. Mm-hmm. They actually had the same guy write both the movies, and they were both very far off, and they were actually pretty decent movies. But the G.I. Joe one was particularly interesting. So if you guys are familiar, the bad guys in G.I. Joe were Cobra, snakes. So that's some connection to snakes. And so at one point, they're fighting somewhere out in the Himalayas, like somewhere near Tibet. And it turns out there is this secret race of people there. And then there's this place called Cobra La that's like basically under Tibet.
Cobra La.
And the people there are the people who are they're Cobra La. And Cobra La are this ancient race of people that went underground after some kind of ice age. And they secretly have been pulling the strings of humanity this whole time. And there's this guy named Globulus, and he's so there are all these people that have this kind of infused organic tech. So it's kind of almost like what we think about before the flood. Maybe it wasn't like all this technological stuff. And they detested man's technology because they were living. I mean, this is supposedly. I mean, obviously it's cartoon guys, but they're living more at harmony with nature, and they were more one with them. But the character Globulus, he's organically changing out his limbs because he's I guess he's dying. And he's getting more serpent-like, so he's got part of a serpent body. And I just think that's kind of an interesting concept where in the show they're trying to eventually release spores on humanity to turn everyone to animals, like zombify them.
Yeah,
that's a long way of saying this seems to me like this is a story once again of like the Nephilim, fallen angels. I think one of the characters in there is called Nemesis Enforcer. He looks just like an angel. I mean, he's got wings just like him. I mean, that's clearly what they're kind of showing. And when you're saying like that, there's like a possibly like a parasite. I couldn't help but think of like the movie Venom. So Venom they call Venom in the comic books, he was a symbiote. And so he's this alien black goo that basically infuses this, like combines with this man to be this, basically giant monster. But he's also he's intelligent. He gives him great strength. Obviously, he has superpowers. I think to me, it's like obviously Venom is what he really is, a demon. That's what they're showing you, because it's like when he combines with Eddie Brock can do things he couldn't, but he's also a little bit more evil. And I believe that. I think that's what, and that's interesting because he's like he is parasitic in the way that he devoured most hosts, but with Eddie Brock he could have a symbiotic relationship. And you think about people who do have something that's kind of like helping them,
which I think
it consumes a lot of people, but it obviously benefits some people.
I think it's worth pointing out too that like it's not that he doesn't need Eddie Brock to survive. The symbiote jealously loves Eddie Brock. It's like if I can't have you, no one's gonna have you. And I don't mean like in a sexual way, but it's like I want this, and I like the edge that's already there because you will hurt people, and I like that. And Eddie Brock's not necessarily evil on his own, but it is kind of like that demonic thing of like, I want this one, and I'm going to keep this one, and we're going to do stuff together.
Well, it's interesting too. Did you? It sounded like you've read did you read the comic books?
I've read some.
So in the comic books,
I've read so many Venom comics. I've read all the bad Venom comic books where it gets really lame.
But have you read the ones? But it's interesting. Like when I was reading the comic books, he obviously was Spider-Man's suit, and Spider-Man got the suit in this comic book series called Secret Wars. And then, but Spider-Man realized so Peter Parker didn't have to make his web shooters anymore because the suit could already shoot the webs, and he had extra powers with the suit on. Spider-Man already has superpowers. Like despite what those crappy movies show you, like he doesn't need an Iron Man suit to be Spider-Man. Spider-Man, he got bit by a radioactive spider. He is a superhero. So, but when he comes back, he realizes it's turning him evil. He's slowly corrupting him, and he gets rid of it. So eventually, it goes to Eddie Brock, who had this kind of like this beef with Peter Parker, and so then he combines with Eddie Brock, who was a bodybuilder, and that's why Venom was big. But secretly, Venom always wanted Peter Parker. Like he wanted. Yeah, that's the host he really wanted.
Because Peter Parker is like, there's that thing in the comics. And they haven't really touched on it in any of the movies, but like, if like so much of Peter Parker's focus has to go constantly into not killing people when he's fighting them, even his strongest foes.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, but he's so strong that even his strongest foes, when he's like punching them, he has to focus really hard to pull his punch right at the exact moment, so that he doesn't kill people because he's so powerful. And so
that's back when the superheroes were good. Yeah. Not like in the DC universe where Batman sprays sprays people with bullets.
Yeah, blowing up their cars, and they're like, okay, well, I guess he didn't kill them directly.
Batman had this one in the comic book. Batman had this one rule. Like he did never murder the Joker. He tried not to murder the Joker.
Yeah.
And then it's like in the comic book, it's just like
I really liked
guns on his.
I really liked in Batman versus Superman where he stabs a guy in the heart. He stabs. Goes through a big fight. There's one guy left, and he takes a knife out of his own shoulder and stabs the guy. And I was like, that's one way to portray it. But Peter Parker, he didn't need. Like, yeah, he now had the organic web shooters and everything, but he didn't need anything to make him stronger. But Peter Parker, why he's so popular and people love him so much is because he still has every insecurity that
he's a good guy.
that normal people
He's
have.
a good guy.
He
like, ultimately wants to do good.
He's like, how am I going to pay my rent? Does Mary Jane love me? What's going to happen to my elderly aunt? Oh my gosh, I feel so much guilty. I feel so much guilt over my uncle's death. But when he has the venom, when he has the symbiote, all that goes away, and he's confident, and he knows how powerful he is. And it corrupts him in that way where it takes away all the things that make him human. And he, when he removes the suit, he doesn't do it because he doesn't want to feel that way anymore. It's like, I just can't do this. And he like brushes aside that feeling of superiority because he knows that's what makes him human. And I think it's like that scorned lover thing, that it's like, okay, well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's almost like the suit is like wants him because it wants to corrupt him.
Exactly.
It's like to me, again, like that's more proof that this thing is a demonic entity. And I know that was a long way to say that yes, I believe that like that kind of a thing and that kind of stuff they show you in the culture is real. I think that the whole symbiote idea did come from these demonic entities. And as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to tie this together, is that biblically, and if you go like into the book of Enoch, the deceased giants, again, we talk about the giants, became evil spirits, unclean spirits on the earth. And imagine, these things possess ancient knowledge. So if you ever wanted to know what happened before the flood, you find these people doing this. The demons know. Mm-hmm. Like the demons actually know what happened before the flood. They know a lot more about that. And again, if you think about, again, like even a bigger conspiracy is, I mean, your Bible literally says that the devil is the ruler of this world. Mm-hmm. He's like the ruler of this realm. So like the whole world is basically under the spell of the evil one. And again, so then you'd say, why would men do all this stuff? Because it's not just men. Mm-hmm. I do think that this is a satanic agenda. And again, if Jesus is the truth, the devil is the father of lies. Mm-hmm. So like they're trying to keep humanity dumb and blind in the dark over here. And so like, I mean, so like ultimately, what lie wouldn't they tell? What, like if men have been trying to conquer this world and take it over and rule this place and rule other men, what wouldn't they do? And I mean, obviously, if we are to believe any of our history, there's nothing they wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. There's literally nothing. And obviously, if they could hide everything that happened before, they would do it.
They'll hide it. They'll burn it. They'll put two allies in a great war against each other, seemingly out of nowhere, and kill millions of people, and then write it a certain way in history, and do whatever they have to obfuscate certain details. And I think that's where people get really caught up, is like it's so minute, it's so acute. Some of it's so acute. Some of the just little details, if you just change little details, like we were talking about with Columbus, like what if the objective was different? What if they were after artifacts and not just spices? Mm-hmm. And it's like you wouldn't think of that until you're like researching blood, Aztec blood rituals or like giants or something, and then you get more of the picture. It's like you have to research and figure out all these vague concepts, and you're getting detailed on that, and then something clicks like way over here in Egypt, and you're like, oh, and
it's all connected.
But then you have to take the attention span into account and think. I've noticed it in myself, my own attention span, just from being on TikTok, is like all of a sudden, if I'm going to watch a video that's 15 minutes long, I have to be doing something like working out or if I'm playing.
Yeah, I know it's too long. Yeah.
If I'm playing video games, the most engaging audio visual interaction, a lot of the times I'm having to stop myself from like listening to a podcast or something on the side. Like our attention spans are dwindling so fast at such a rate that it's like I say at the end of my Maui video, like, they don't have to cover things up anymore, because even if we find out, we're not thinking about it we might think about it the next day, but I put my Maui video out like a month after it happened, and it was like, why are you talking about this? not my fans, but it kind of felt like that. Like no one else was talking
Yeah,
about it.
right. Well,
it's gone.
Isn't it interesting? That's what they would say. The powers that be, what often they do, and I know that certain administrations used to do this, where they'd be like, we can't talk about that. There's an ongoing investigation. We can't talk about that. Can't talk about that. Can't talk about. And then it would be like, by the time they could talk about it, it'd be like, that's old news. We gotta concentrate on what's happening now. And it's like, I think that I was saying one of the first conspiracies that I don't think I ever got any good answers on, and you might have a video about this, and I know you could if you wanted, was the Vegas shooting, with all those people, the biggest mass shooting basically in United States history. And I was always and this is before I woke up, and I was like, well, I thought they were going to be talking about this forever, because based on how they cover other tragedies, we never figure out what happened there. That seems insane to me. Well, see, and I know I shouldn't have brought that up because we're never going to be able to. It's funny. Speaking of short attention spans, we're approaching 3 hours on the podcast today.
I actually, real quick, I actually do cover randomly. This is so random. I cover some of the Vegas stuff in the Maui video. Because
that's right, because it's related to Maui, right?
Yeah, and I cover it in a meta sense. People really wanted because the police chief in Maui was a captain and was the head of the investigation, or the response, I should say. That is too. I mean, that's too crazy to make up.
I
pointed out in my video. I don't go super deep into it. I pointed out the fact that I think it's interesting, the connection in a meta sense, because I think it's interesting what it implies, which is this insane thing happens, right? The biggest mass shooting in history, and not only that, but it's bombastic. It's something that would happen in a 90s Nick Cage movie or something. It's so so crazy. Absolutely. And people, generally we have one question: why? And that's why that went away, because there was no why, because why is a secret. Why is some crazy dark government stuff that we cannot talk about it. And something went wrong, and Vegas happened, and because it was so public, it happened in Vegas. And think about this: Vegas is the most covered on-camera place on Earth. There's more cameras there than anywhere else. And there was too much evidence, so we just had to move on. And that's how I tied it with Maui. I'm like, I think conspiracy theorists are so hung up on this guy being here, not because we can prove anything about him and this, or not because we can prove anything about him in relation to Vegas, but it's just kind of a subtle sign that we're never gonna know what happened. It's just a little road sign on the conspiracy highway of just move on. This guy's here. You're never going to find anything out.
Yeah, and I think we should end it there. And I think one thing I wanted to say was what's interesting is I think when you do look back at previous events, try to put yourself in these people's places and don't assume people are stupid. Think of actually real motives and real smart people and why they would do the things they would, because I think that's what they really want you to believe. If they believe these people were a bunch of ignorant racists, then obviously you can ascribe that's enough of a motive for anybody. But to thinking people, you're like, wait, why would they do this? Maybe they were smarter than we're giving them credit for, and maybe it's us, or we're the dumb ones for believing everything without asking any questions. I think that's all we really have done is ask questions, and eventually you come to the conclusion I got more questions. I've got lots more questions now.
And especially when people get angry, because I'll just ask questions. I'm just asking questions, and then when someone gets angry at you for asking a question, I can't help but go I have a couple more questions now.
Now we know. Now we know where to really start looking. It's and I think that's right. I think get back to the Challenger thing. When the question gets people upset, you know that you're probably over the target. And you start offending people, and it's and that's not what. And I've said that my goal is not to offend people; it's to get to the truth. And it's obviously I can be sensitive when I want, when I want to be, but obviously I think we all know that where our heart is, we really just want to know what's the truth, and I think that honors more people than it offends. So that's my honest opinion. But anyways, Max, This has been awesome. Obviously, we're going to have to do this again.
Yes.
Tell us where people can find you.
I am Parapsych TV on TikTok and YouTube, and that's those both link to my Instagram that I've never posted on. But yeah, TikTok and YouTube, Max Powers, Parapsych TV. So thanks so much for having me, man. It's been great joy, and yeah, we're gonna have to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But yeah, if you guys, thanks for sticking with us. Obviously, I'm following Max on all the things. Obviously, when you get two guys who are, have covered a lot of conspiracies, we could probably have talked for 10 hours at least, and then still talked more. But anyways, appreciate it, guys. God bless you. See you next time.